This is Batman calling from Wayne Manor with a special announcement. From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be host for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who do we have hosting?
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Ben.
And Ben. No, Vicky. She's outside fixing a car that we broke. To no one's surprise who listens to our podcast. We have a celebratory guest for the second time. He was kind enough to come on the first time. For some reason, he said yes to the second time, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to him about coming on for the third time when we get to our next 50 episode. So we have what we think is the preeminent coach and driving instructor in the world. He wrote the best book that we can find on racing. He is constantly looking to improve and always looking to get questions and think about things from different perspectives, and explains them in a way that sometimes you're ready for and sometimes you're not. So you listen to his podcast more than once and keep going through it, and eventually it all makes sense. I'm on lap number 4 for those keeping score at home. And we have Ross Bentley again. Thank you, Ross. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Ross.
Thanks for having me back. I guess, those photos that you have of me. No, I'm just joking.
Okay, that's okay. There's no more negatives, so we can always say you have all the copies now, so it's fine.
You can say that, yeah.
So, Ross, just in case people weren't here for episode number 100, where we celebrated our 100th episode with you, and in case they're not fully fluent in your past and what you've been involved with your racing and with Speed Secrets, could you just give a summary to everybody just to bring them up to speed?
Well, that is the one question that I actually don't enjoy talking about, because I hate talking about myself and all that kind of stuff. But I guess most people are like that. Maybe the interesting thing is, I wrote a book called Speed Secrets it was published in 1997 or 98, I think it was. And it was a complete kind of fluke. I had no intentions of ever writing a book. It was kind of, well, maybe it's a little bit like what you're doing with your podcast, in that I was capturing what I was learning. And, I've always said that I'm a learning addict. I'm a junkie for learning. And as I was learning things, I was writing things. And then I had my own school, track performance race school. So I started writing all these things, and it turned into this document. And a friend said, you should publish that as a book. And I kind of laughed, and he sent it off to somebody, and it ended up becoming a book called Speed Secrets. And I guess that's kind of how many people know me. It's fun when I'm at the track and somebody says, somebody will introduce me and they'll go, Ross Bentley, I don't know. And somebody go, Speed Secrets? And they go, oh, okay, yeah, we know that. So I guess that's kind of what I've been known for. But I started racing in 1978 and raced Indy cars and IMSA prototype cars and GT cars and all sorts of things, and I still get out and play a little bit whenever I can, primarily in like World Racing League and AER, and I'm going to do a Lucky Dog race coming up, and just trying to have some fun, still getting behind the wheel. But I more importantly, I guess, is that I coach 7 days a week, it seems,
at least,
coaching drivers of every single level, from novices at their first HPDE event to pro racers. So I guess that's the background. And sorry, you asked for a quick one and I dragged it out.
Oh, that's fine. It's probably the only time we're faster.
Great.
So it's not a problem. So we still have your open invite if you ever want to come out and do a race on the East Coast. Lucky Dog has 2 on the East Coast this coming up. So
yeah, So they ran Charlotte. You guys ran Charlotte?
Yes, we did.
How was that?
It was almost good right up until it wasn't. We
Okay. Yeah.
we totaled our first car. Jennifer broke 2 ribs and
Ouch.
wasn't good. But we had a great time. She's back. She's going to Lime Rock tomorrow.
Let's see if Ross can guess where on Charlotte that the unfortunate incident happened. Where he thinks the most fraught spot is.
That chicane on the front, was it?
No, it was good though.
Good guess.
It
good
was
guess.
coming out of the Roval onto the. I guess that would be the back straight.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Where you go over that little crest,
Yep.
Okay.
and then the car slid a little bit to the right, and then looped around clockwise into the wall.
Got
Yeah.
a little behind in your steering, did you? Jen?
I don't know what happened.
We're still trying to figure it out. I think it was a catch, but not a recovery.
Okay.
So
I actually just I was going through some quotes because I do this thing for my weekly Speed Secrets weekly newsletter, and I was going through a quote, and the quote was from Carl Edwards, and he says somebody was interviewing him after the race, and he says, "I think we broke something. I think it was traction."
yeah.
Yeah.
But Jen is dying to get back in the car. She's been waiting somewhat patiently. We've been trying to do a skid pad since February or March,
I'm very excited.
and we're finally going to get to a skid pad event at Lime Rock tomorrow with the autocross. They have a double length autocross course we're going to use as well. So
It's a shame that more drivers don't spend more time on skid pads. It is so valuable, and obviously it depends on how you use it. I mean, I know some people go out on the skid pad and they kind of spin around in circles and go whoop-de-doo, this was fun. But if you use it in a more kind of deliberate way, and especially if you've got somebody to kind of help guide you, coach you, instruct you a little bit,
we do.
it is so valuable. And it's one of those things that, I have a driver that I've been coaching this year, racing in the IMSA Prototype Challenge in an LMP3 car.
Mhm.
And I've had him on a skid pad
Number 2.
five days.
Uh-huh.
And the difference it has made in his car control is, it's night and day. So
Well, this is our first time. I mean, what should we look for?
a slippery surface. No. So to me, if I was going to the skid pad with you tomorrow, the first thing that I would do is I'd say, okay, just go on the skid pad and kind of just get used to, get your bearings around where you're going to drive. And every skid pad's a little different. And it's been a while since I've been on the Lime Rock skid pad, but it's just basically drive around the skid pad and kind of get used to the grip level that you have or don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I usually do is have a driver experience understeer, meaning so go around, sort of start picking your speed up, start picking your speed up. And of course, everybody can see me with my hand movement going around in a circle here, right?
Nothing like it for an audio podcast.
The great thing about a podcast, yeah. So, you're driving around the skid pad, and eventually the circle starts getting bigger because 9 times out of 10, as you slowly pick up the throttle and pick up your speed, the front end starts to push. You start to get some understeer. And you start to get some understeer. And then you do a little lift of the throttle. And 9 times out of 10, you get a little load on the front end, the car hooks up. But the other thing, then you do that a few times. And you kind of just get used to the, picking up the speed, then lifting off the throttle, getting some weight in the front, and the front grabs again. And then what you do is you pick up that speed, and actually put more steering in.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice that the understeer gets worse. So you actually straighten the wheel up a little bit, and it's just that tiny little bit, and you bring the front tires back on that angle where they start to grip, and you realize if I straighten the wheels up, the car actually turns more, which is a very counterintuitive thing. And yet when we're on the track, when we get some understeer, many drivers put more steering input in because that is instinct, right?
Right.
I turn the wheel, I'm going to plow off the outside of the corner. So instinct kicks in and I better turn the wheel more, but it's the worst thing that you can do. So you actually get used to dealing with understeer. And yeah, it's not as much fun as kicking the back end out and hanging out in a big oversteer slide. But I think it's really important to start there and start with learning what that understeer feels like. And once you've done that a lot, and by the way, my belief is you do any of these things until you're bored with them.
Okay.
Because when you're bored with it, it's like, okay, now it's ingrained, it's a mental program. The likelihood of you doing that when the pressure's on the track is pretty high then.
Mhm.
So then you go, okay, now let's play with oversteer. And depending on your car, the differential in your car, the tires, the slipperiness of the skid pad, all those things, it's going to dictate what it's going to take to get some oversteer in your car. And it may be kind of pick your speed up, pick your speed up, pick your speed up, do a lift of the throttle to transfer some weight forward onto the front end, and then give it a good squirt of throttle to try to kick it out and get some power oversteer. And then once you've got some power oversteer, then you got to try to correct that and hold it there. And you'll see somebody get on a skid pad who can drift a car around a skid pad. Well, what my buddy Johan do, like, I don't know, 86 miles in a circle or something like that, like some stupid crazy thing.
Yeah, he did a stunt for BMW where he was sliding it for a crazy amount of time.
The most amazing part of that, though, was not what Johan did. It was they refueled the car while drifting. They had somebody come up and pop a bottle of fuel in to keep the thing going longer. So, but most people will get on a skid pad and they'll kick it out. They'll get some oversteer, and if they make a quarter of the way around the circle, they have, that's pretty good. Yeah. And then that keeps going, and it gets maybe half a circle, and then 3/4 of a circle, and eventually you can get all the way around, and you just keep working on that, and that takes a long time. And then you can start doing things like a figure eight. And guys, I'm sorry if I've gotten way too heavily in deep with this, but I just think skid pad stuff is so cool and so valuable. But yeah, then you just get 2 cones and you kind of do a figure eight. So you come in, you do a little break coming into it, you get the car to rotate, you kick it up with a throttle, you drive it around, the drift around, straighten it so you get a nice smooth arc back, so you get acceleration to back across the other side, brake, get the car to turn, rotate around, and you do a bunch of figure eights. And then you can do all sorts of other things, but that's the basics. Start with some understeer, then some oversteer, and then a figure eight.
So,
and wipe the smile off your face.
I know. I'm like so excited.
So just in case it's not apparent to some of our listeners or maybe to some of our guests or hosts, what would this or what should this opportunity do? How does it tend to improve your driving on a track or an autocross? Because it seems like, while it sounds like a lot of fun, some people will just sit there and think, what did that do for me?
It's a great question. And a few things. I mean, overall, it improves your car control.
Uh-huh.
So, there are times you get on the track and you either get in the corner a little too hot and the back end kicks out and you try to catch it. But like I said, you kind of get a little behind in your steering sometimes. I always believe that, it's kind of slow hands in, but you got to react quickly.
Right.
And I see a lot of drivers, when I look at their in-car video after a crash, I'll see them, turn into the corner, the car starts to step out, and they try to catch the car with hands as slow as they input into the corner. Mm-hmm. And yet it should be quick. So the catch has to be quick, and you can learn that and develop that programming, that habit of catching the slides quicker if you practice it over and over and over again on a skid pad. So I would say you learn car control, but what does car control mean? It is being able to sense the rotation or yaw of the car, like how sideways am I? How much steering input do I need to put in to catch that? And how quick do I need to turn my hands, move my hands to make that happen? So that's a big thing. And surprisingly, what you learn on a skid pad also is how to use your vision better. And the challenge with a skid pad is everything's kind of small. And it's really tempting to kind of have your eyes drop down and look at the surface just in front of you. But as you know, we follow where we look. So if we start looking out the side window to catch a slide, we're more likely to catch it.
Mhm.
And if you can really get your eyes looking ahead while you're on a skid pad, and especially when you get to that part where you start to do a figure eight, where you're kind of not just visually, like physically looking to where you want the car to go, but mentally you're going, that's where I want the car to go. I guess that's ultimately the two big areas you're going to get out of the time on a skid pad. The car control, which again comes down to sensing what the car is doing and having the right speed of hand movement. And secondly, your vision, working your vision in a more, I guess, deliberate and appropriate way.
Hmm.
And it's a pretty innocuous setting to do all that sort of stuff, right? It's not, you're not learning this in race traffic or somewhere a lot more consequential, right?
Well, absolutely. And, one of the things that's great about a skid pad is everything happens slower. So you can be in a slide, sometimes we're on a racetrack and we go through a corner and the car goes and it snaps out sideways and you catch it and you carry on and you're kind of going away going, what just happened?
Right.
Whereas on a skid pad, it's like, okay, we're sliding now, we're sliding now, we're sliding now, we're sliding now, we're sliding now. And you have lots of time to think about it. And then with repetition, it just becomes that habit or mental program. And you're right. I mean, generally, you have to work pretty hard to mess up on a skid pad.
Right.
Well, it's good to go into all this detail because the last episode you were on, they were talking about their plan to go to a skid pad. So it's taken them 50 episodes to get to one, and it's really going to happen.
Awesome. That is so. Congrats, and that's smart thinking on your part. So,
Yeah,
we'll get something right eventually. So we're trying. So I've had Ben and I. He came onto a podcast early, plus or minus right when we had you on, and I think I've asked him a couple questions 3 or 4 times each because I'm still not quite sure. Something doesn't quite click, and I think we're talking the same language, and then sometimes we just talk right past each other, and I get confused. So you get the question for the 4th time.
let's cut this baby in half today.
And it's interesting. I was just having a conversation with a couple of drivers a couple of weeks ago about that topic of how you can have 3 or 4 people say the exact same thing to you.
Yep.
And another person comes along and says it again, and there's like one word different, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I get it now.
I know what it is. It got that aha or the click, and it's like,
yeah,
I got it now.
Or the other one, and then I'll let you ask the question. But the other one is perception.
Yeah.
And I was doing a track walk at Road Atlanta a couple weeks ago with 3 drivers, and we got to turn 10 at the end of the back straight, and I said, where do you guys brake? Where do you begin braking for turn 10? And I got 3 very, very different answers. And I said, guys, understand that I've looked at your data and you all brake at the exact same place. But, for one person, it was like, I can see the 200 board. The other person was the 200 board, the 300 board is lining up with my shoulder. The other one is, so it's that perception thing. So sometimes when you hear somebody talk about something and they say it in a different way, sometimes it just clicks with your perception.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Ben made fun of me when I was trying to standardize our turning in or our braking points. I was going to put a vertical piece of tape on the side of the car windshield. And it was when that tape hit that mark, that was when you said whatever it was. And Ben's like, you are way overthinking it. But
yeah.
Well, you're right. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm braking at the so-and-so." Like, no, you're not. Like, nobody's really doing exactly what they think. I'm sure you've been in the car with enough people, Ross, you know this too, but you have to adapt where you're telling people to brake by what they think they're doing. They're like, "Oh, I think I'm braking here." And you're like, "Okay, that's what you're doing." You just have to kind of adapt to, like, okay, brake to your reference.
Well, and funny you say that because a lot of times I'll before asking a driver to move their brake zone in, and let's say, like I've seen, and I know that they could actually, they could brake 2 car lengths later. The first question I ask is, where are you braking now?
Yeah.
Because until you know where you're beginning to brake now, I can't, I can say brake 2 car lengths later. That's kind of meaningless, right?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So the first of the, I've never gotten an answer I like from Ben yet. So
Pressure's on.
I don't think it's pressure. I just I know this is going to come as a shock to anybody who's ever listened to our podcast. I have a tendency to overthink things, and until I get there, I will just keep wrapping myself up in the tighter and tighter knots, trying to where I understand it. I'll be like, oh, okay, and then I move on. So,
And I also have a deep tendency to underthink things, so we really don't meet in the middle very often.
yep. So it's the relationship between the apex and throttle resumption, right? So I think that there are certain turns where you can hit or start resuming throttle before you get to the apex, and certain turns where you need to wait till the apex, and then other turns where you may, especially if you blow it, you may want to wait till after, or else bad things happen.
Yeah.
But is there like a high percentage rule there? Because I know Dion, we had Dion on a podcast recently from Racers 360. He says that there's like a string, and once the wheel starts to open, then you can apply the throttle. And I've got bad habits from Lemons, so the line is more or less a fictional thing that somebody else is occupying, and I just kind of work with what I got. So this apex throttle turn-in has been a constant source of, I don't know what right is right.
You want to know what the ideal is, and you haven't heard it from anybody quite yet. Is that what you're saying? You want to know what is my ideal?
If I'm out there by myself and I'm trying to set my personal best, what should I be aiming to do? So
73.871% of the way past the turn-in point.
Okay. All right. I got that.
Yeah.
It's 73.86.
Okay. Sorry. No. And Bill, actually, the very first thing that I'd say to you is drive, stupid.
Yeah. Yep. It's just whether there's a comma or an exclamation point in that sentence.
Yeah. So for drivers who do tend to overthink, that's a great trigger.
Yeah.
To kind of just drive stupid. And by the way, being very analytical, thinking through what you need to do is fantastic. It's the right thing to do up to a point.
Sure.
And if you look at the very, very best, the drivers who have been champions multiple times, and whether it's Lewis Hamilton or Scott Dixon or Jimmy Johnson or whoever, you pick the drivers who win the most often, they have this fantastic ability to be very, very analytical up to a certain point, and then at a certain point they just drive stupid. Meaning they kind of stop thinking and just let themselves drive and trust themselves that all that thinking has put the right programming in there. So that's the first.
So what's the right programming, Ross? I need
okay.
To
So to follow on with what Dion said, I would say that's a very foundational, basic rule that when you reach a point where you can start to unwind the wheel, you can start to feed in the throttle. I believe it's a little bit too simplistic because I know a lot of drivers who their line is so, they have such a late apex that they have to kind of deliberately unwind the wheel, and then for that reason, then they start to follow on with putting the throttle on. Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually, if you think about it another way, you kind of flip that around and say, I'm going to start to feed in the throttle now, and that's going to force me to unwind the wheel. So there's a difference between driving the car out to the exit of the corner with the steering and driving it out there with the throttle. Mm-hmm. And to be really fast, and by the way, in the beginning, drive it out there with the steering. Just unwind the wheel and feed in the throttle.
Right.
But as you get faster and you want to get even faster still, then you need to drive it out there with the throttle. You need to start to squeeze in the throttle, and that forces you to unwind the wheel. Of course, you have to be sensitive enough to the car to be able to do that, but you need to you need to drive it off the corner using the throttle, and that forces you to open up the wheel and use all the track coming out of the corner. Now, I still haven't really answered your question, have I?
Nope.
You're waiting for me to tell you. By the way, if there is anybody in the world who could say, you should always apply the throttle before the apex, at the apex, 1 car length after the apex, 4 car lengths before the apex, I think they're full of what.
Okay.
There is no absolute, there is no rule there. The only kind of guideline I'd say is when you go to power and you start feeding in the throttle, you want to continue feeding into throttle. And if you find that you've fed the throttle in and now you got to lift out a little bit to avoid driving off the outside edge of the track, then you got on the throttle too soon.
Right.
And next lap, just hesitate a fraction of a second before starting to feed in the throttle. If you come out of the corner and you're like, I'm flat to the floor and I'm bored before I get to the exit, then start feeding in the throttle earlier next lap. And if you are, I guess, aware enough to be able to start to pick up and just be aware of, okay, I got to full throttle at the apex.
Yep.
And I came out of there and I felt like I had a little bit of room at the exit. Next lap, I'm just going to feed in and go to throttle just that fraction of a second before the apex.
Right.
And keep feeding in earlier and earlier and earlier. Now, I'm turning this into a big long.
Okay.
That's
answer
okay.
here, but
This is why we're here.
It's almost as if you've written books on this.
but you know what? So if somebody says you should be on throttle before the apex of a corner, and that applies to every single corner. Again, I believe that's you cannot come up with a blanket rule that fits all that.
Right.
And by the way, I could turn into the corner and I could go to full throttle right after the turn-in point if I wanted to. And why would I? That would sounds like a great idea, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But to do that, I'd have to slow the car down to 4 miles an hour.
Right.
So what makes this sport of ours so much fun is the fact that we're always constantly balancing the entry speed with when we start to get back to full throttle, or when we get to full throttle. As I always say, 9 times out of 10, not always, but 9 times out of 10, it's where you get to full throttle that matters, not when you just start to apply the throttle.
Right.
If you just start to barely squeeze in the throttle before I do, but I get to full throttle before you do, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to beat you. So sometimes we're so caught up in this, never coast, always have a little bit of get some throttle on. Sometimes we do that to the point where we haven't allowed the car to finish rotating or changing direction. And we got to throttle so soon that we're feeding in, and then we have to hesitate, and the throttle just kind of waits, and now we get to full throttle. Whereas I come into the corner, not necessarily me, but another driver comes into the corner, waits just a fraction of a second, and squeezes all the way down to full throttle. And they get to full throttle before you do, for example, and that's going to be a quicker way. 9 times out of 10. Not always.
Yeah.
But again, there's this balance, this magical balance this dance that we have that, I could get to full throttle way sooner if I slowed way down. But if I slow down so much that I can't make up for the amount of speed that I slowed down to, that's not a good trade-off. So we're always trying to find that perfect trade-off between corner entry and min speed and when we get back to full throttle. So, which would you rather start to accelerate from, 50 miles an hour or 53 miles an hour? I don't know about you. I'd rather start to accelerate from 53.
Right.
If I could go to full throttle at the same place as I did when I was going through the corner at 50.
Right. Yep.
So have I clarified things or confused things?
Well, you led to where I'm going to have to ask one of my other questions and interrupt the flow that we had where Ben was going to go next. But so what's worked for me in the past in most sports and academics and wherever is learn a few fundamental principles get really good at them, and then the rest of it kind of falls into place. But the problem I have with it's not a problem. The challenge I have with racing is it doesn't seem to have any that are near 100%. I don't know if it has one that's 100%, because every time I sit there and think about it, and it's like, yeah, but then, like, if you turn around and look at, pretend you're at Mid-Ohio on your board, that green car, I could be at full throttle at Mid-Ohio at the keyhole, just where that green car is. But I felt like I was breaking the rule because I was hitting throttle way before apex, which was this rule that somebody had said. But I can't find any rules to get my fundamentals locked in, or maybe I'm.
It takes a lot of work. There's really not, from what I know, there's not anybody's going to come tell you, here's the rain line. These are all the people that are full of it. Somebody comes and tells you, here's the easy approach to always do this one thing a certain way.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to apply in this one, so it's kind of like. It's more art than science, I guess, is where I'm.
I think I may have poisoned the well with these folks a little bit, because when I talk about my own driving, at least in endurance racing traffic, I will skew toward an earlier apex and getting the wheel open and back to the throttle sooner if I can get away with it, because usually it benefits me in traffic to be a little faster coming off rather than trying to race somebody down into the brake zone. I would rather kind of eat it on the way in, but try to be quicker on the way out, just as a endurance racing methodology.
Yeah, and even that, there's a, I think that's a really good principle. It's a really good guideline.
Yep.
But your point, Bill, is there a rule that works 100% of the time? There are a couple of basic, the laws of physics. Guess what? They work 100% of the time.
Right.
But how you use those laws of physics, I think, become principles and guidelines as opposed to rules.
Yeah, the application seems to be a flexible, because you can get it's. I'm getting thermodynamics now. There's a path-dependent variable and a path-independent variable, and This is definitely one where it depends on how you get there matters.
Which so on my podcast, I did my buddy, fellow coach, Mike Zemicki.
Mm-hmm.
Mike and I got on, we started recording an episode, and partway through it, I realized
it's a two-parter.
This is a two-parter.
Yep.
And basically, what the whole theme of these two parts of this episode, these two episodes, was there is no hard and fast, absolutely, this works every single time.
Right.
And but I still think you're absolutely correct in saying there are principles that work. I mean, it's all about the laws of physics work, and it's up to us to find that the right balance or trade-off between using the correct line, using the amount of rotation we can get in the car, and the entry and minimum speed in the corner to when we start to feed in and when we get back to full throttle. There's a trade-off amongst all those things. And you can take two different drivers, and they will, they will have subtle differences,
right?
And yet turn lap times that are almost identical. Or you can see two drivers that are like, you compare them on data, and you really dig in. You go, man, these look almost identical, and you look and go, but that driver's 0.4 of a second faster than the other driver. So those trade-offs matter, and one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating about our sport is the mental calculations that we do at speed.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we're pattern matching while we're driving.
Yep.
We come up to a corner, and, everybody talks about reference points. There's where we begin braking, there's a turn-in point, there's where we end braking, there's an apex, there's a reference. And those are all good, and they're really important in the very beginning. But the better we get, the more we start to pattern match. And the example I use is, if you just stopped just prior to the brake zone for a corner, you could look up and you could go, that's where I begin braking. Down there at the end of that curbing is is, two of the painted panels before the end of that curbing is where I turn in. And the apex is over there. But the other thing that we do is we notice the lines at the edge of the track that go down, and something matches up with something on the horizon. And the exit point over here, if we look at that, there's a line that crosses over from the exit point across the apex to the exit of the track or something, and it lines up. And it's kind of like we're looking at this pattern and going, that's what life looks like when I'm in the right place in the track. The next lap, especially if you're doing endurance racing, rarely does it look like that.
Yep.
Because there's 12 cars on the inside of you and the outside of you.
Yep.
All going different speed. So we're constantly pattern matching. So we're figuring that out as we go along. And then we go through a corner, and how many times have you gone through a corner and you went, whoa, I overslowed for that corner? And if you looked at the data, you'd go, yeah, it was 1.4 miles an hour slower. But people say your butt sensed that. No, it's probably, you have more things in your head, I think, in your brain that sense that kind of stuff. Inner ear,
right,
motion, all those things. But we can sense the time, like we come into a corner and we brake, and we can kind of almost go 1, 2, 3, turn in, but that timing of that is embedded in our brain as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pattern matching, we're noticing time differences, we're sensing that change in speed, we're sensing, just the most subtle little change of direction with our vision and with our kind of the gyro in our body.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing all that. We're doing it all at speed, and like that, just it's like I said, after being in a sport 50 something years, I'm still fascinated by that. Every single day I wake up and go, how the heck do we do this? And then I think about it all day long and come back with you and say, you should get on the throttle at the point where you can commit to throttle as soon as possible, all the way to full throttle, and drive the car off the corner with that throttle, opening your hands at an appropriate rate to keep the car just on that edge of the track as you come out of the corner. That's when you get back to.
Yeah, there it is. There it is right there. That's how you do it. I think one of the most important things that you talked about that I usually have to tell people on track is that one of the ideals that we're chasing as we get better and better is to commit to full throttle as soon as you can. And if you're having to do a stutter step or pedal fast coming off of the corner, then we've made a mistake and it's time to retime it.
So great point. In the most important thing that we can do as drivers is learn,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So we come out of a corner and we get to throttle, and then we got to lift out to avoid going off the edge of the track. Now, the simple lesson there could be, I got to throttle too soon. But was it? Or was the angle of the car not quite right? And maybe you could get to full throttle even sooner if you got the angle of the car pointed in a better direction coming off that corner.
Right.
Or maybe the lesson was, I just got to be a little bit more patient, let the car finish turning, then go to power. And you learn that. The great thing, unlike rally and even unlike autocross to a great extent, is we get lap after lap after lap after lap.
Yep.
Keep trying things. And if there's another lesson here, I think it is, don't get so caught up in I have to be consistent. Now, consistency is important. You have to be consistent before you can start to experiment. But I see some drivers so caught up in this, I have to be consistent, that they never try anything else and then wonder why they don't improve.
Yeah.
Consistent and slow. That's what happens sometimes. They hit a consistency plateau, right? I've seen it.
Yeah.
That's no fun. I don't want to be. I don't think I've done 2 laps in lemons the same way twice ever.
Nor has anybody.
Well, and that is one of the beautiful things about the low budget endurance racing is it kind of forces you to do different things.
Yeah.
And as long as you are paying attention and are aware of kind of the results of what you did, you're going to keep getting better.
Yeah. It's funny, the HPD teachers sometimes they kind of get upset that I don't follow the same line 2 laps in a row. It's because, I'm trying something on this turn, or it didn't quite feel right, or it's like, do I go a little earlier? Do I go a little? And I can tell when it feels better now.
Yeah.
And they're just like, you got to be consistent. You got to hit that spot. And I'm like, but I'm trying to find out if there's a better spot or a better angle. And they don't understand that I'm not used to doing more than 1 lap the same way.
Well, yeah, and having been there and still doing that at times, you do want to see somebody. You want to see somebody be able to be consistent.
Yeah.
Before they start being inconsistent.
Yeah. Okay.
Deliberately inconsistent, as opposed to blindly inconsistent.
Oh, okay. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying I'm used
Yeah.
to playing with it, so it's
Yeah. No, I've been in those events as an instructor where somebody says, "Oh, that driver, they're way inconsistent. They don't know what they're doing," and then you kind of find out, and they're like, "Actually, that driver really knows what they're doing. In fact, they're testing some things and trying some things." So
yeah. There's a couple turns in my. I've been trying to do some HPDs, and we've been going with one NASA Great Lakes, and they're doing a whole bunch of tracks I've never been to. So there's a few turns at each track where I'm just like trying to find out which one feels good, and like Madness at Mid Ohio, or what is it, 5 and 6 at Gingerman. There's like 100 different ways to get through there, and I'm just like, that one didn't feel good, or that one felt better, but I still feel, I don't think I did the same lap the entire weekend through those turns.
So a question for you is, have you had a time where you went, "Oh, that felt right. That really felt right."
Yeah.
Then you found out that it was slower.
Yep. Yeah,
well,
I've done it for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That I don't.
Sometimes comfortable, like it felt really good. It felt fast, but it wasn't. And then sometimes what felt fast was. So again, we have to kind of do that mental math while we're driving as well, and be aware of it. And it's gotten easier because we have more tools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have a plus minus and data systems now, predictive lap timing, a lot of fairly simple apps and things like that can help us with that. So
right.
It's gotten easier for that part of it, but
yeah, as long as you turn them on.
Yeah, well, there is that.
All right, Ben, I interrupted your question. I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't think whatever it wasn't that important. So let's keep rolling. I forgot. I have a question that's just totally self-serving, and I just wanted to ask you this. But what do you think are some of those? Because I'm just picturing you being out there, where you're probably not the only coach at the track at some big race events or something like that. And I'm curious, what are some of the strangest, maybe most esoteric coaching techniques that you've seen other coaches apply? You certainly don't have to name names, but if it's funny, please do name names.
Wow. So congratulations. That is a question I've never been asked before. And I got to think about it a little bit. What it does remind me of, though, how often I will be at a track and I will get to a corner, and there'll be like one spot that I stand in, and I'll go there, and there'll be 3 other coaches there.
Yeah.
We've all found that is
Turn
the spot.
5 Road Atlanta, probably. Is that one of them?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I was just there, and Mid Ohio, and I go up to my usual place, and there's JJ, Jonathan, and George up there, and it was funny because Mike Zemicki and I were talking how a few years ago I was at Le Mans, and Le Mans is a pretty tough place to coach because it's so big, and so I'm sitting in the top corner of this one grandstand, the outside of kind of the turn 1 Dunlop curve kind of area. And I sit down there, and I'm on my radio, I've got my headset on, I'm doing my usual thing. I'm kind of in the zone of coaching and watching all the cars and everything. And I kind of turn, and there's Mike Zemicki sitting like 6 feet away from me. And it's like, what the heck are you doing? Like, so we start laughing about this, and we start sharing like some other stories. And he says, yeah, I noticed a photo, because I'd been the previous fall, I'd been in Shanghai coaching at a World Endurance Championship race, and I took a photo, and he said, look at this. He pulls out his phone. He shows me a photo that he took, and literally in this grandstand that holds, I don't know, 50,000 people, we must have been sitting in the exact same seat.
That's crazy.
So, I guess the more you coach, the more you find out that we all kind of go looking for a lot of the same things, and we're looking for that. So there is that. So you want the wackiest, weirdest thing, though?
For sure. That's definitely what I want to hear if you got one.
Well, okay. This is not wacky, but this is one of those things that was wrong. It was just a wrong thing. So I'm at VIR, Virginia International. I'm standing up on the balcony deck thing, sort of above the concession area. And I'm actually, I'm waiting for my session for what I'm coaching to start. And there's another series, race or qualifying, I can't remember, going on just before us. So I go up and I kind of next to the railing, and there's a fellow coach there who will remain nameless. And I'm kind of standing there, and I kind of go hi, and he's busy. I'm not going to disturb him, but I can hear what he's saying. And as the driver comes out of turn 1 and is heading towards turn 3, NASCAR turn at VIR there, right in front of us, he gets on the radio and says, "Don't go wide. There's a bunch of marbles out there." Well, the driver immediately comes up there, goes wide, gets in the marbles, spin across the crash, and crashes into the wall. And I mean, I'm shaking my head going, you don't tell somebody what not to do.
It's just like a laser pointer right to what they're going to do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I use the example right now. Don't think about a pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant. What's in your brain?
I know exactly where my daughter's pink elephant is right now. As soon as you said it, I was like, it's upstairs in her bedroom.
Yeah. And if I say to you, don't go wide in that corner, the likelihood of you going wide is pretty high.
Right.
I've increased that. So by me telling you what not to do, I've increased the chances of you doing it. So if that coach had said, keep the car tight to the apex, the driver would have kept the car tight to the apex, stayed inside all the marbles, and got through the corner without.
Not a bunch of extra information, or not about here's the danger, just here's what to do, right?
Yeah, tell the driver what to do, not what not to do. And so that was a great example of, it's something that I've been, I guess, coaching other coaches on and instructors in the HPDE world for years, and did I learn the hard way? Yeah, I learned the hard way. And I also learned from other people that, you tell people what to do rather than what not to do. And yet it sure is a lot easier to tell people what not to do.
Yeah.
If you have kids, it sure is a lot easier to tell them what not to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and I use the example all the time of, Johnny, don't pick on your sister. Johnny, don't pick on your sister. Johnny, don't pick on your sister. What does Johnny do? He picks on his sister. Johnny, go in the backyard and throw the ball around. Johnny goes up, so we kind of know it, but we have been programmed to tell people what not to do. And we do that an awful lot. And so when when you ask that question, that's, I guess, really the first thing that sort of comes to mind. Are there things that coaches do? Yeah. Sometimes a lot of coaching, especially at a certain level where the skills and techniques are not really what makes the difference. It's a lot of it is the mindset, the confidence, all those kinds of things, what the driver's focused on rather than what they're not focused on, So some coaches have resorted to some pretty strange ways to get drivers in the right mindset. And, one of the things that as a coach you need to do is learn what works for a driver and what doesn't work. My coaching style for me, is fairly, compared to some coaches, it's a little more laid back. It's a more, I guide them to learning. And I know other coaches that'll just, start screaming and yelling at a driver. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me. Now, have I had to have some come to Jesus meetings with a few drivers? Yes, I have. And but I save them for very special times, and therefore I think they have bigger
Right.
impacts. Like when somebody sees me wound up, they know that's
Yeah.
serious.
Yeah, I've definitely worked with people like that who, you know, that they would, you know, kind of save their ire or their irritation for something that was a really serious thing, and everybody's walking around like, oh my gosh, did you see Josh? He's really, you know, he's really jacked up about something, and it really, you're right, it makes a bigger impact.
Yeah. But you know, ultimately, coach's job is kind of to find a way in, and my attitude is whatever
Sure.
it takes. And you know, I had a recent experience with a driver where, you know, I was probably spending more time helping the driver get dressed and undressed because of an injury. And, you know, it was kind of like, this is slightly uncomfortable, but you know what? You got to do what you got to do to help a driver get ready.
And wait, we're all gotten a whole lot better at washing our hands lately, right?
Yeah, fortunately.
You were one of the first people I would see post where you were flying like right after this thing started. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope he's okay. I was so scared about flying. Like, there goes Ross. I crossed the world again.
I got to tell you that it has felt a little, you know, there have been times where it's like, am I playing Russian roulette here? Now, I will say that fortunately, my coaching client that I work with mostly, he and I are, I'd say, hyper cautious. You know, our rule, we have since the lockdown, I mean, we have never sat in a restaurant to eat. We go to restaurants unless they have outdoor seating, we won't eat there. We will take food and go sit somewhere else. But yeah, that's kind of our rule is that. So
That's
anyways,
our family.
That's a whole.
That's our family's rule too. You're not crazy.
Yeah. And some people go, you know, you're going too far. But with the amount of travel that I do and everything, it's just like and by the way, I don't want to get sick. And maybe, and as important, I don't want to get something and then pass it on to somebody else. So
Sure.
yeah. So anyways, that's off topic. Sorry, guys.
No worries. That's basically the subtitle for our podcast.
Off topic?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Occasionally we stay on point, but not often.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do a question now.
Yay.
Yay, my turn. So what are some of the best things that I can do in the off season to get better or ready for the next season? And Bill wants me to say before I invent the COVID-19 cure.
Darn, that's exactly where I was going to go.
Part-time job, but you know.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the very first thing is, I guess I'd ask the question, do you use mental imagery or visualization?
I do in some cases, yes. I probably could use it more. Let's put it that way, because I've read a lot about that, and I understand that works really well.
So I would say that it's the thing that, so it's something you can do easily in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
The cost is absolutely zero. And it can have the biggest impact on a driver of anything. Now, but the most important thing is that you do it in a very strategic way. And let me give you an example. A driver that I've worked with, prior to a race, we had about a 3-week gap between races, and I basically created a plan for him where Monday was you were going to work on this, Tuesday we're going to do this, Wednesday was this, Thursday was it was like going to a gym and working with a personal fitness trainer. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't, most people go, oh yeah, I visualize driving the track. Okay, that's part of it. Like what you could do perhaps is, what do you think is the first track you're going to drive in 2021? Tell me what you think it might be.
In 2021?
2021 is going to be, I've got the list. 2021, the first track will be pit race.
Okay, so maybe let's just kind of do a little, if you're okay with this, just take a couple minutes and we'll kind of work out a little bit of a program for you.
Okay.
So Monday night, if you spent 20 minutes Monday night, and I should say, so the very first part of this is, you don't just kind of close your eyes and think about driving pit race.
Mm-hmm.
That will help. But what will help even more is if you take time, you spend a little time closing your eyes, relaxing your body, just totally slowing your breathing down and fully relaxing your body. You know, taking a few minutes where you kind of go, I feel my feet relaxing. I feel my legs relaxing. I feel my body kind of sinking into the chair that I'm sitting in. I feel my arms, my shoulders, my whole body relaxing. What you're doing is you're slowing your mind down to a more receptive state. And if you get yourself relaxed into that state, then what you imagine becomes much more real. Mm-hmm. And then what you do is you imagine getting into the car, strapping in, going through the whole process and getting ready, getting pre-grid, heading out on the track, and now you're at pit race. And maybe you want to do this is just practicing laps, you know, just for outright speed. You're just going to work on driving the track. And now you just see yourself, all the little details of driving the track at speed. And maybe you drive just a little tiny quicker than you're used to. So you're kind of almost at that point where you're kind of, ooh, this is a little uncomfortable. But in the process, you're becoming more relaxed and comfortable getting uncomfortable or being uncomfortable. But you spend Monday night focused on the technique of driving pit race. And then, by the way, the best thing you do, Tuesday morning, get up and spend 10, 15 minutes refreshing that. Like, go through the exact same thing for 10 or 15 minutes. Your brain, if you put that into your brain before you go to sleep, your brain will process it overnight. Tons of research around what's going on with our brain when we're sleeping. But all of that stuff that you programmed in your brain through mental imagery, and by the way, you're not just seeing yourself doing it, but you're actually moving your hands and arms and legs and feet, and you can imagine the G-forces building and the car sliding. You can feel the bumps as you're going along, and you hear the sound of the engine, and you hear the sound of the engine as you change gears. You imagine all those sounds and that feel as well as the visual part of it. So now you refresh that on Tuesday morning. Tuesday night, and are you okay with me asking you a couple of questions here? Like maybe around your confidence level driving a car?
Mine?
Yeah. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, not a lot. Not a lot. I'm not very confident now.
Can we just pick a number and let's say it's 5?
Okay.
Okay.
Or 3.
Okay. Okay. But let's just pick a number and let's say it's 4.
Okay.
Tuesday night, you close your eyes, you relax, you breathe. And now you see yourself getting in the car and you're going 5. And you almost like you kind of grab this little knob that's on your shoulder and you kind of turn it up and you go 5, 6, 7. I feel pretty darn good today. This is going to be good. And now you go out and you drive the track. And you're kind of smiling, kind of like it's a little bit of fake it till you make it. But if you do that over and over and over again, and you see yourself just being, you don't have to be a 10, but just see yourself 1, 2, 3 notches up on that dial of confidence. And you go, yeah, I just feel good. And now you just, and by the way, there's a reason why you should feel confident, because you've been putting all this effort in and you've been practicing. And the night before, you know, this isn't some fake confidence. This is confidence because you've spent the time studying, thinking about your driving, and then actually programming it the night before. Mm-hmm. So now you're like, I feel pretty damn good about this. You do that for 20 minutes on Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, you do a 10 or 15 minute refresher on that. Wednesday night, let me just pick something. Let's say it's Wednesday night is sensory night. Okay, this is when you get in the car and it's like you put on this driving suit and it's got extra sensors all over it, and you just become extra sensitive to what the car is telling you. You feel the motion of the car, even like the tiniest minute little thing. What Lewis Hamilton or Scott Dixon would feel if they were driving your car. That extra sensitive, just feel the motion. I hear every last little detail about it. I feel the feedback through the wheel. And then you again, close your eyes, you slow your breathing down, and you go through that, and you imagine being ultra super sensitive to what the car is telling you. And in the process, you feel the car, and you're more comfortable driving the car closer to its limits. And by the way, you come in and you go, Bill, I'm beginning to wonder if we've got one bad shock on this car. Like, I just noticed the way it's handling. It's different in one direction than the other direction.
We never have bad shocks on our car.
Right. Okay. So you do that, and then Thursday morning you do a refresher, and then Thursday night, Thursday night it's racecraft night. Thursday night it's like you're at the start of the race, and you're coming up, and you're on the rolling start, and you're coming up to the green flag, and they throw the green, and you know, how many different scenarios are there that could happen at the beginning of the race? An infinite number, right?
Yep.
But your mind is, no matter what happens, I am ready, and I'm ready, and I'm going to move forward here. I'm going to gain positions on the start of this race, and I'm going to move forward, and I am ready. Car moves over there, I'm going to go here. Car moves here, I'm going to go there. I'm ready for whatever happens. And you just see yourself in all these different race start scenarios, and it's not a matter of you planning out every single one of them, because there's an infinite number of them, but you play through those scenarios, and your mindset is, I'm ready for everything. And I actually should have said this in the very beginning. Back on Monday night when you were doing this, you kept telling yourself, pit race, pit race, pit race, pit race, because you're building a little trigger phrase for it. Tuesday night is confidence. It's like, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. Whatever the trigger phrase is for you. Wednesday night was sensitive. I'm sensitive to the car. I'm sensitive to the car. Thursday night now it's I'm ready. I am ready. I am ready. I'm ready. Or going to the front, going to the front. So you build a little trigger into each one of these things. Now, Friday night might be adaptability. You're driving the car and you imagine yourself on the track and you feel like, oh, car's not handling right. Like it handles differently in right-hand corners than it does in left-hand corners. I could get on the radio or I could scream and yell and complain about this. I'm just going to adapt. I'm going to change the way. So you build the programming that you're the adaptable driver. And no matter what happens, you just adapt to it. You know what? I can't use fifth gear anymore. I don't care. I'll just drive with fourth gear now. The brakes are going. I don't need brakes. I just brake lighter and I just roll off the brakes. I'm really super light. Feel like the left rear tire or the left rear shock is bad or something and the car kind of falls over in that way. I'm just going to come down and be a little smoother as I turn in. So you pretend that you are the adaptable driver and you just keep telling yourself, adapt, adapt, adapt. Saturday, and I'm trying to think of other examples here. Saturday, you might go back to a very specific driving technique, and it might be, let's say it's your brake release. As you come into the corner, it's going to be smooth release, smooth release, smooth release. And you come into the brake zone and you're hard on the brake pedal, and as you get to the corner, you ease out of the pedal, smooth brake release. And the car just arcs its way into the corner. Nice flows, but it bites at the same time. Like you kind of go in and go, whoa, yeah. And the car turns and you go, man, I could carry 3 miles an hour more. So you come in there the next lap and you're 3 miles an hour more and it turns because you get that nice smooth brake release. So you build the programming around that nice smooth brake release. And then Sunday night, you do just drive. And you just see yourself on the track grinning and just driving and just loving the feeling of driving this car at the limit, dancing with the car. And it's just like, oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. And you're almost giggling to yourself, like, this is so much fun. And you just keep saying, just drive, just drive. Stop thinking, just drive. So now, and by the way, if you've written those things out and you kind of write out a plan for yourself with a couple little bullet points of each thing that you want to remind yourself. And then on a Thursday night, you just look down and go, Thursday night was my racecraft night, so I'm going to be working on, I'm ready. And on Tuesday night, it's my confidence thing, so it's here I come. And, so you build in this trigger thing, and now you've just built a mental training program for yourself for the off season. So You ask the question, what can you do in the off season? Mental training, like that, just mental imagery, visualization of that.
You know, I've used some of those things like to help me fall asleep, the guided imagery. So
Yeah.
So you could make a whole app thing with that. We can download Ross Bentley apps to talk us through in 20 minutes every night.
Oh, what a disgusting
Well,
thought
if there's not already an app for that, definitely buy every one of this man's books and listen to all of his podcasts if you can't find his app. But also, it's funny when you were mentioning sort of the bodily mental inventory to go through to get into the right state of mind. It's funny, a few years ago, I was in therapy for something else that completely unrelated to racing. I'm doing great now, but one of the things that I learned in therapy was that meditation tool of doing a mental body inventory. And it was completely unrelated to racing, but I was racing down at A&P in Dawsonville, Georgia. It was scorching hot in July or something like that. And our team is too cheap and lazy to do a cool suit. And I was out there. I made a mistake of looking at the clock. I'd only been out there for like 20 minutes, and I had to do 2 hours in the car. And I was so hot. I thought I was going to die. But I started from my head, like, Ben, you can feel the top of your head. Ben, notice your ears. Ben, notice your, and I went all the way from head to toe. On track. I thought I was going to die by the time I finished the mental inventory that my therapist had taught me. I was like, okay, I can make it the rest of the time, and I did.
And what's so cool about that is when I ask drivers, do you use visualization, mental imagery? And most drivers will say, oh yeah, I do a little bit of it or whatever. But what they focus on is driving the track, and they focus on visualizing or mental imagery of the technique of driving. But not enough of, we just noticed, the little program we talked about, there was the technique of driving pit race. I think on, Friday night was the technique of brake release. But the rest of them were more around state of mind, confidence, around being ready and aware, all of these things that are kind of more, some people would say woo-woo stuff.
Woo-woo!
Yeah. But the stuff that separates the best from the rest often is the woo-woo stuff.
The woo-woo, Lisa, the woo-hoo.
Yeah, well, there's woo-woo too. Yeah. But so you asked the question, what can you do in the off season? That would be the very first thing I'd say. Obviously, simulator time, indoor karting. There's a lot of things that you can practice driving on the street.
Oh, yeah.
The simple thing of, how do you release the brake pedal? On the street, most of us kind of pop our foot off the brake pedal because we can. You can get away with it. And yet we're building bad habits by doing that. So.
Oh gosh, I especially since the beginning of this COVID thing, I haven't been on track since March. I was thinking about that just today. Like, I'm the worst about just like slamming around, like, just getting on the brakes at the very last second on the street, like I'm on the track. I'm horrible.
I caught myself today. Let's just say I was pretty determined to be in front.
Yeah. I'm a nightmare right up till about 5:00, and then I shut it down.
Mine was not about. It wasn't about speed. It was about position. Let's just say. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm on the off ramps too. I love the off ramps where one lane disappears. I'll always take the one that disappears.
So Ross, we got a lot of feedback. You sent out the announcement that the Catalyst came out, and I ordered one that day, and then we got a ton of feedback from people asking us what we thought about it and how it was to use it on the track, and we liked it a lot. I think it's got a lot of advantages to it. It's not one size for everything. It doesn't incorporate everything, but it gives you video. It gives you the in-car coaching was quite nice. I think some of the terminology isn't quite exactly what it does. Like the optimal line may not be the optimal line. It may be a better line than what you just did. But I think it's useful for drivers of kind of all stages and all, even somebody who's quite good like Ben, or maybe even you, could get something from it, just a little bit. But it's really, especially with the COVID, I thought it was a really good addition to our team because we weren't getting a lot of right seat coaching because it was unavailable at the time. And I thought it was a really good instrument to add to our team, and we've been using it and enjoying it, and we're going to use it again. And Jennifer is very excited to use it. What are your thoughts in related to it?
Well, I guess just full disclosure, you know, up front, I played a role in the development of it. In the very beginning,
that's cool.
3 years ago, I got a call from Adam Spence at Garmin, and his title was, I forget what it is, Chief Architect, whatever, Area 51.
Yeah,
and I'm
Area
like,
51, yeah.
Like how cool it, you know, he works in the Area 51 department at Garmin. It's like, that is cool. Anyways, we started talking about this thing or about motorsport and tools and everything. So I went and I spent a day with them. And one of the things that we did was they asked me, what would you want in a tool to help drivers? And I gave them kind of my wish list, and that's what they created. In fact, they actually created more. I've used the analogy, and excuse me if somebody's heard me say this before, but you know, the old thing of Henry Ford said, if I'd asked customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Right.
Well, what I asked Garmin for was a faster horse, and what they gave me was a car. Like they did some things beyond what I even could imagine. And so there is that. I played a role in the very beginning in the development of it, but I will say, I don't make a single penny. Like if you bought one, great, good on you. I didn't make a penny off it. So I don't make anything off of anybody buying them.
Right.
What I do believe is it is a really super valuable tool for drivers. And the biggest difficulty, I think, is some people look at it as it's another data acquisition system like AIM or Motec or RaceLogic or something like that. And it really isn't. It's a driver optimization tool. That's what it really does. So the very first thing I'd say is one of the things for, especially for you, make sure that there's a setting in there for coaching, auditory coaching,
Yes.
and then there's advanced coaching.
Yes.
Okay, make sure that you have advanced coaching on, because, and to your point of, does it tell you the optimum lap or the optimum line through a corner? It tells you what your optimum line is, meaning it has figured out from the number of laps that you've driven, if you pieced all those things together, this is the best that you have done.
Right.
And if you can go and do that, you will, you know, as it will tell you, I mean, it'll tell you that you can knock off, you know, 1/10 of a second or 7/10 of a second or whatever by driving this line that you have kind of done or done.
Right.
Like it will never tell you to do something you haven't done to some extent. It doesn't have a database of Lewis Hamilton laps.
Mm-hmm.
That would be obviously impossible to have that for every car, every track, every driving condition. But it learns from you as you drive, and it sees when you did something a little different over here. And by the way, I've had a couple of drivers that say, well, they came back and told me that my optimal lap was pretty much the same lap time as I just did. And I'd say, wow, you are super consistent then. Because if you go out and you do 20 laps and it comes back and says your optimal is the same as the lap you just did, well, then you drove 20 laps almost identical.
Right.
In which case I'd say to you, you need to go and experiment a little bit more. Try some different things. So the takeaway, if there is not a big gap between those two, I'd say it's probably time for you to experiment a little bit and try some different lines. Try braking a little earlier, lighter, try braking a little later, harder, try releasing the brakes a little sooner, try releasing the brakes a little slower,
Mm-hmm.
turn in a little crisper, turn in a little slower, you know, all those things. Try different things. And what it does super well is it will help identify which of those things are the best. And I was at Thunderhill a few weeks ago, and somebody said to me, well, you know, if we just put a blind squirrel on the track, they're not going to find their way around the track. This thing can't help them. And I said, actually, it would, because even a blind squirrel, every now and then would do something more right than the previous lap. And when they did something more
Eventually.
right, the great thing about the catalyst, it will say new best. It will tell you that you've just done something better than you ever have. And because we are, we're like other animals, we like confirming feedback. If I say to you, that was better, you're going to go and do that better thing again. And then you do that a little better. And then you kind of make a slight mistake and you go a little wider here or a little tighter here. And it finds, oh, that was even better. So it's going to keep guiding this blind squirrel until they're doing it even better. And that to me is one of the great advantages, the big value of the device. The other big thing that I can say that this is one of those things that in the very beginning I put on my wish list, and I said, if you can create the video of that ideal lap, that would be cool.
That's cool.
That's what they did. They, as you know, I mean, it basically breaks the track up into different segments and then takes all your best segments. And by the way, if it's one of those deals where you went flying through this one segment so fast that was a new record for that segment, but you fell off the track in the next segment, it will say that one, that doesn't count because you couldn't have accomplished it. But it will take all those segments and then it'll stitch those segments together in the video. So at the end of the day or after the session or before you go back on the track, you can sit there and watch a video of your optimal lap, your best lap that you've ever done, pieced together.
Yep.
So that helps you visualize, program mental imagery of, this is what I want to do, and I want to do this more. And not only is it a matter of kind of going back and go, well, I think on the fourth lap in turn 6, I did this. Well, guess what? It's right there in the video. You can watch it.
Right.
So I think that's a really cool thing. And it's, I'll be honest, the first time I really used it, I got out of the car and I said, well, I guess I'm out of a job as a coach.
I would love for this thing to make me obsolete. I never have to get in the car with anybody again.
Well, what I've come to realize is it's actually a great tool, and I've used it as a tool to enhance my coaching, where, first of all, I can work with more drivers because I can do some stuff with the driver, get them ready, send them off, and know that the catalyst is kind of minding the store and looking after the driver and coaching them on the things we talked about. And then, and then when they come back, in the meantime, I can be working with somebody else. So it's actually, it's helped me. So I think it's a super valuable tool, and for the price, when they told me the price, I was like, wow, you can do it for that? Great. And some people go, that's a lot of money. Well, I think it's less than most people spend on a set of tires, and they last a lot. This thing will last a lot longer than a set of tires will.
So will the benefit you get from it, right? Because what you learn from it sticks with you forever. So the tenths and the seconds this thing gives you, you got them forever. Yeah,
exactly. And I have heard some people say, oh, well, it didn't help me enough. Like anything, it's a tool. It takes a little bit of time for you to get the maximum out of it as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, Bill, you mentioned whether or not somebody like at my level, I would get anything from it. I assume that I would. Like, I assume if I put it in the car, it would definitely show me something I could repeat and do better and better over and over. I'm sure I would learn something from that.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I tested it. So I'd been, again, doing some work with them in the development. And then when it was close to being finished, I went and spent 2 days at Heartland Park in Topeka, 2 days, and working on kind of usability kind of stuff. I would drive, and they'd have like different units, and I'd come in and I'd say, can you make that button green? Could you move that button over here? Could you make that number smaller and that one bigger? So there were just a lot of stuff that just to make it more usable. And at the end of 2 days, and I'd been thrashing this track pretty hard in a guy's Mustang, the GT 350R, super fast, really cool Mustang.
I've ridden a few of those.
I just said, okay, I'm just going to listen to what it tells me to do now. And it told me to do 3 things. I went on the track, I did those 3 things, and it knocked 9/10 of a second off my best lap time. So I've had people say, well, either you really do suck as a driver, or couldn't you have figured that out on your own? And it's like, actually, I thought about it and I went, if somebody had asked me right at that point, how much faster could you go? I would have sat there and I'm pretty sure I would have said, I know there's at least another half a second to me.
Right.
And I would have gone on the track. If I'd gone out and tried to go and find that, I probably would have found most of or all of that. But what this thing proved to me was I didn't have to think. I didn't have to think about where am I going to find that time. I just listened to what it said, and it told me what to do. So I thought, well, if that can do that, and again, I'm not the greatest driver in the world, but I've been driving for a while, and it found me that big a chunk of time just by me trusting it. And I kind of went, okay, I'm pretty sure it's going to find some time for other people. Some people it might find a tenth of a second. Some people might find 3. I know a driver who's told me it's found them like 3 seconds. And like I said, I know other drivers that said, yeah, I found a tenth of a second. And, I know some drivers who say, and you know what, I'd sell my mother for a tenth of a second. So
yeah.
So
it sounds really cool. I've only ever heard good things about it so far. So I'm excited to see one in person and see people using it. It sounds really cool, especially the videos. So cool.
Yeah, the video is cool. And yeah, it's, well, I tried it in an LMP3 car, and I'm really anxious to try it some more in that level of car with that level of driver. Unfortunately, the one thing that you do have to be careful of is when you mount it, the unit itself, it's two parts. There's the little camera that mounts up on the windscreen. That's actually where the accelerometer is in that camera. And that's why it has to be mounted solid on your windscreen, just a suction cup thing or whatever. But the main unit screen thing, it needs to be in sight of satellites. So if you have it back in your car with the roof covering it, it won't be able to see the satellites. So you do need to have it far enough forward so that it sees up through the windshield.
Right.
And you can actually push on the little satellite icon on it and see that it's seeing the satellites. But with the LMP3 car, we tried on a test day and couldn't quite get it. We have to make a custom mount to get it to fit in there. And the problem with a LMP3 car is a carbon fiber roof, which blocks any satellite signal even worse. So, but the little bit that we did, like we got it so that we pick up some laps, but just not all of them. And it was pretty cool. I mean, it worked. It just, and I had a couple people say, because it has like a magnetic mount, so it ran in an LMP3 car around Road Atlanta, pounding curbs and with upwards of close to 3 Gs, and the mag mount never failed. So, so it was a good test, but I'm anxious. We're going to build a proper mount for it that we can get it mounted in a LMP3 car. So we try it there because I'm just curious to see how it works there. And to your point, Bill, I think it's some people say, well, is it for everybody? And I go, well, I don't think anything is for everybody.
Right.
But is it for novices? Is it for advanced drivers? Yes. Yeah. I think it can help drivers of all levels, and it's going to help some more than others.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. So.
Yeah, I thought it was really potentially handy, especially for the better drivers that we know, because the population of people who can help them to get better diminishes because there's fewer people who can show them, oh, you should apex at the 3/4 curb, I mean, they got that, it's but this could be a potential resource for them because there's not a whole lot of people that they're able to interact with that can help them to be better. And this,
And one of the other things that was just kind of exciting when this whole thing started, and they contacted me years ago, was Garmin is getting involved in motorsport. How cool is that?
That's wild. That's not who I expected. When I heard that, I was like, did you say Garmin?
Yeah. And I wore Garmin watches and heart rate monitors when I was running a lot and years ago. And it's kind of like, man, it's a company that knows how to make products. It's kind of like if Apple said, we're going to build data acquisition system, you go, well, they're probably going to make it a whole lot easier than what else is out there. So,
might not have a button, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Ben?
Yeah, it's cool.
Ben, you got one?
I definitely do.
I've got two listener questions that I have to get to, or I'm going to get yelled at. But
all right, I got one for you. So I was sort of curious, given that you work sort of within all levels of the driver talent strata, as you mentioned, just sort of like maybe picking 3 points, like a beginner, a club racer, and a pro at those different levels. Are there a couple of different behaviors that need correction, or sort of things like beginners mostly need help with this? You know what I mean? Are there some sort of typical archetypical things that you come across at different levels?
Man, you're good with those questions. They're tough. All of them have.
Sorry.
No. So, often when experienced instructors are asked the question, what are some of the typical things that novices need to work on? Everybody kind of goes to vision. They need to look farther ahead, and for sure that is an issue with most newer drivers on the track.
But it is with all of us all the time too, right?
Correct. And I would say that it kind of goes across all those levels, because at the core of that is it's habits, or what I call mental programs. We do what we do because we're programmed to do so. And we don't do what we want sometimes because we don't have the right programming. And so we haven't built the right habits. And unfortunately, we spend a lot of time driving on the street. So we tend to look at the bright, shiny objects, those taillights of the car in front of us, and we get a habit of looking about there. And then we get on the track, and even though those bright, shiny taillights are not necessarily there, well, they are in a lemons race, always. But we have a habit of only looking that far ahead. So, that's kind of that's the vision part is actually, obviously it kind of goes across the spectrum, but I think at the core of that is, again, it's these habits. So when you ask that question, I immediately go, yeah, it's bad habits. And, I would say that as a driver kind of moves up in ability, I would typically say the difference between, pick your favorite top pro driver in the world right now. And the difference between that driver and somebody that's kind of, I'm going to say, making a living as a professional race driver, but not winning world championships or IndyCar championships or whatever. The difference there is, a big chunk of it is how they use the brakes. And it's not in the, I'm going to brake later than you department. It's right. Usually in the pressure they use and how they release the brake pedal and when they release the brake pedal. But a lot of that even goes back to novices and intermediate drivers and the habits they have. Because for years they've been driving on the street, and whether you come up to an intersection and you slowly release the brake pedal and kind of blend your foot off the brake pedal, if you can blend off, if you do that, or you pop your foot off the brake pedal on the street, it doesn't really make a big difference, because we're not driving the car anywhere near, at least we shouldn't be driving the car anywhere near the limits. Right. And so we get away with that, and that becomes a habit. And, I've told this story before of being at a Audi Club event, long story short, being asked to go and coach, instruct a young woman in a car, obviously in a car and a track, duh. And the instructor that was working with this young woman was saying, she continually misses the apexes. She can't drive the line. And I rode with this woman and immediately noticed that the reason she couldn't was because every time she got to the corner, she'd pop her foot off the brake pedal. Front of the car would kind of unload. She'd turn the wheel, and the car just wouldn't respond the way, like I could see her kind of going, like looking at the apex, turning the wheel, but even though she wasn't driving the car anywhere near the limits, the car just wasn't as responsive as she wanted it to be. So I just got her to build the right habits around releasing the brake pedal more slowly and smoothly. Right. And by the way, I didn't get into any discussion about trail braking or anything like that. I just said, I just want you to release the brake pedal slowly and smoothly. And as soon as she started doing that, she started driving better. So I would say that is, kind of from a novice perspective up to the elite level, that brake release is one of the things that makes a difference. if I hone in just on that intermediate level, when I look at most intermediate drivers, and I want to be careful here, this doesn't apply to every single one, kind of like what I said earlier, there are no rules, but as a guideline, I would say that most intermediate drivers are overly focused on driving the line. And they're so caught up in I got to turn in here, and I got to get to that apex here, and I got to clip that, and I got to come out to that apex or that exit point there. And they're so caught up in doing that, they're not driving the car anywhere near its limits, or they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention to what the car is telling them. And therefore, one of the things I often tell a driver like that, I say, drive the car, not the track.
Yeah.
So kind of let the line, when you drive the car and you're focusing more on what is the car saying as I come to the corner and I brake and I turn in, as I ease off the pedal and I turn in and I get to go towards the apex, and then I start to feed in the throttle and go to throttle, and that drives me out to that exit point. As I do that, where does the car need to go to make that work better? And oh, by the way, that's the line. Right. So you kind of get to the line from the opposite direction. And I'll use it, the other thing I'll say here is if you drive the ideal line, but you're not driving the car to its limits, you will be slower than somebody who drives offline but drives the car at the limit. And that's one of the great things about racing in budget endurance racing, is because you spend so much time driving offline because of traffic. But if you consistently drive the car at the limit, and I understand the limit sometimes might be 9/10 or 7/10 or 10/10, just depending on where you and the car and where you want to be. But if you consistently drive at 8/10, you will be faster driving at 8/10 off a line than you would be at driving online at 7/10. So, I guess to answer your question, when I kind of focus in on that middle section of intermediate drivers, I think they get too caught up in the line. And that kind of goes back to Bill's comment earlier about instructors saying, you have to drive that line.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a place for that. But there's also a time and a place for paying attention to what the car is telling you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I can think of a way that it could be dangerous, being too attached to the line and not being able to be flexible or willing to be flexible is in a race situation. I've had teammates before who have been so intent on getting slapping back over in line before a break point after they've made a turn. So, made a pass, going down a straightaway, they get out, they pull out to make a pass, but I got to get back on line before I start getting the brakes. And they were so intent on doing that we've had contact a couple of times where, the driver is so intent on forcing their way back online that they didn't have the pass completed. So that's definitely one reason I can think of to not be so married to the line.
Absolutely. And then the other one is, and I see this on, track days and, non-competitive driving track days, where there's no passing involved, but somebody turns into the corner and they realize they're going to be wide of the apex. And they're like, oh my God, I'm going to miss the apex. Somebody's going to get mad at me. I'm going to have to, and then they force the car, they crank on the wheel more, they force the car into the apex, and one of two things happen. The best thing that happens is they scrub off speed, but the worst thing that happens is they spin because of it.
Yeah.
Because they put more steering in than they needed to. And there comes a point in time where you kind of got to go, you know what? I missed it. I'll get it next lap.
Yeah. They can pull my cool guy car, but I'm going to miss this apex.
Yeah. So interesting to think about it that way, though, that, just as I answered that, it's kind of like, sometimes that brake release, it can be for the very, very fine last hundredths of a second between top level, elite level pros.
Yeah.
But in the very beginning, it's just basic, build the right habits. And one of the right habits is just do everything smoothly, including the release of the brake pedal.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I'm asking a question that I think was given to me in code, and I don't even know the answer. So I was told you would understand this. What is a story about a rain light as a brake light?
Oh, okay. So in 2003, racing the Daytona 24-hour race, let's just say, so I was driving a prototype car, LMP2 car, and with about less than 2 hours to go, the brake lights on the car failed.
Oh, I know where we're going with this.
We were about to be black flagged, and the team manager or engineer came on the radio and said, our brake lights are out. We're going to get black flagged to come in to repair it. And I knew that if we did that, we would lose the race. At the time, we were leading the race. And me and the team manager were so in sync that I'm kind of going, I don't want to do this. And at that moment in time, he comes on the radio and says, I think he said something like, there's no rain in sight. And as he was saying that, I looked over at the rain light, the switch on the dash to turn the rain light on. So I drove the last hour and a half, 2 hours of the race. Every single time I got to a brake zone, I just reached over, clicked on the rain light as I'm braking, downshifting through the gears. As I get to the end of the brake zone, I reach over, turn the light off, go through the corner. I drove in every single lap, every single corner. I did that, other than the odd time where I was so stuck in traffic. I was too busy, and just hoped that nobody kind of noticed that they didn't work on that one particular corner. So we got away with not pitting, and we drove to the end and won the race. So won the Rolex 24 with that. So
well, congratulations. That's good now,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it was great then.
Yeah, it was one of those. You win a race sometimes, and you just go, "Yeah, we were just faster." That was one of those races where we kind of went. We weren't necessarily faster, but we were a little smarter than everybody else.
So you got the driver behind you for weeks sitting there thinking, how does Ross go through turn 12 with just a lift? He never.
I saw him do it.
It was lap after lap. He just never hit the brake there. That's awesome.
Well, that goes back. There are stories of people who have weird switches for their brake lights to either not come on in certain corners or to come on so they can, like a little push button on the dash or on the steering wheel, so they can turn their brake lights on and then go to the brakes.
I like that.
I'm not suggesting to anybody listening to this podcast that they do that.
Everybody listening to this podcast is trying to do that now.
It's going to be something like strobe brake lights going down the line.
Yeah.
And then we had another listener who said they were curious as to what the most evil car you had ever driven is.
Oh, well, let's see. Let me look down the list here. Actually, so I've driven a couple of. Depends on your definition of evil, but I'm gonna go with the car that scared me the most. And interestingly, it was an Indy car. What was that, 93 or something like that? I guess it was. I was driving it was a 2-year-old chassis. That was when IndyCar. Every year, the IndyCar teams had a new chassis, unlike now where the chassis lasts them for multiple seasons. It was every single season, Lola, Reynard, Penske had a new chassis, so updated design, more like Formula One is.
Right.
So think about this as, I was racing in 93, it would have been like I was racing a 91 Formula One car. And in the meantime, they had changed the rules, some of the aero rules. And in the tunnels underneath the cars, the 91 cars were designed with these strakes, these little fins in there. And for 93, they were not allowed. So none of the 93 cars had them. So it was the Nazareth Oval. And that oval was super tricky.
Unequal, right? Unequal. 1 and 2 are unequal from 3 and 4, correct, on that track?
Yeah. Just a weird shape and very, very difficult and really fast. I mean, in IndyCar, we would get around there. I think at the time we'd qualify, it's a 1 mile oval. We'd get around the 1 mile oval in about 20 seconds at 180 miles an hour.
That's insane.
Something like that. And this car, because of the way the air was, if I was by myself, it was kind of okay in the balance. But if anybody got close behind me, it would change the way the air came off the back of my car, and all of a sudden it was like it would dump 500 pounds of downforce off the rear of the car, and it would just snap sideways. So I drove this race, like constantly looking in the mirrors going, there's somebody behind me, the car's going to snap. I caught it. And it was, at the end of the race, I got out of the car and I was shaking because there was, there'd be 200 laps. So 200 times around that oval, and with 28 cars, Indy cars on a 1 mile oval, you're in traffic just about all the time. So you're constantly just like, is the car close enough to me that it's going to take the air off and make the car snap on me? Is this the moment where the car snaps and I go head first into the wall and then I spend time in the hospital with broken legs or worse? So you're constantly thinking about that. At the end of the race, I had to get out, and I'm shaking and telling the crew just how scared I was. And they're like, you should have done what Danny Sullivan did. And I was like, what? He pulled in 20 laps in the race. He said his car was so bad. That was when he was driving for, he was Penske that year. No. Trying to think of who. He was with one of the big teams, but his car was so evil that he parked it partway in the race. He said, I'm not willing to die to do this. So I learned a good lesson today. A few years later, actually, Danny Sullivan and I drove at Daytona together. And I remember talking to him about that. And we were like kind of sharing stories about just how evil. And he was in a new car, but they just missed on the setup.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those, you're kind of, afterwards, you're kind of laughing about it going, but man, that day I thought I was going to die. So,
that does not sound like fun.
Actually, I would say that a good handling Indy car on a 1 mile oval is the most fun you will ever have in your entire life. A bad handling Indy car on an oval is the most scary thing you'll ever do in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
sounds like it's super fun until it's not fun at all.
exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah.
We've got a section now where we end the podcast with some questions, and we call them the Fast and Furious Storytime questions. And we've got a few we haven't asked you yet, and people are dying to know.
Okay. See what I can do.
Desert Island?
Sure.
Okay. So you always introduce that one so well, though. But we have a desert island. Okay. Apparently we want all of this money. What are the top 5 cars that you would pick to be on our desert island that has a brand new racetrack?
This year's Mercedes Formula One car.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry. Next year's Mercedes Formula One car.
There you go.
Probably this year or next year's the Toyota LMP1 car.
Okay.
I would take you pick it the best road course. Who's won most of the NASCAR road courses this year? Chase Elliott, right? Is that Hendrick? I can't remember. So I'd take one of the Hendrick NASCAR stock cars, road course cars.
Oh, okay.
I would. There's 5 of them, right? So that's 3. I would take a minivan.
Nice.
A minivan.
From the people
Because I just
challenge.
There is nothing like driving a car on the track that is not meant to be driven on the track.
Yeah.
We do it every time.
I would
Yeah.
mind taking a
Yeah.
minivan.
And then I'd probably take, I would probably take an E30 M3.
Oh yeah.
And there's sort of some emotional attachment to that, but some of it is just, that car is just so much fun just to play with. Tossable, sideways, make it do whatever you want. You can just dance with that thing. How's that?
Nobody ever thought that Ross Bentley's top 5 cars that he could choose
Would include a minivan.
would be a minivan.
So can I just jump off a quick story on that?
Oh,
so
sure.
last year, because I'm doing some writing for Road and Track, I was invited to go and participate in the Performance Car of the Year test. So we had 11 cars at Thunder Hill. McLaren, Lamborghini, Ferrari, the new Corvette, Hyundai Veloster, MX-5, BMW, Lexus,
I think they had a 911 that came in. I can't remember.
911, you name it, like 11 of these really cool cars, right?
Yep.
Partway through, I think the second day, the editor, Travis, says to me, he says, we've always wanted to do the performance van of the year. And we have 3 minivans here that have been used. They're like service for towing the photographers around and moving stuff and everything. And they said, you've been voted to take out the 3 of them and put in the best laps, and each one of them tell us which is the fastest around here. So somebody slipped in a Black Sabbath CD and a stereo there, cranked it to full blast and said, go. And I went out in these 3 minivans that just tossed them around like you wouldn't believe, and came back and we kind of joked about this, and there was a little story about it. But I came home and my wife was like, what was it like? And I said, oh, it was really cool. I had some really cool cars and great people and everything, but the minivans was the most fun I ever had.
Sounds like a blast.
I kept asking people, like, what is it? And it's this idea of driving something on the track that's not meant to be driven on the track, and making it do what it's not meant to do. If I got into, the latest Formula One car, the latest whatever, you name it, that's designed to be on the track, yeah, it's really cool and it's really fun, but it's meant to do that. To take something that's not meant to do that and make it do that, that's pretty cool. So there you go.
Well, let me ask you one that ties right into that. If you were able to only have cars from one decade in the past to drive every day and also to race, what decade would you choose?
I like this question.
So it has to be a decade from the past, because I couldn't say the next one.
You could choose right now or the next one. Any rules are fine.
I know the next one would be pretty cool, but if I had to, it would probably be, I'm gonna say the 60s. Formula One cars are pretty cool looking then. The Ford GT40 was kind of always one of my, I grew up reading about it and making little plastic models of it and everything. So, the whole Ferrari, Ford, Le Mans thing was a big thing in my life, and Lotus Formula One cars and all that kind of stuff. So 60s.
Cool. Yeah, very cool.
Okay, our next question is, where would your ultimate road trip be? To and from, and in what car? And the minivan's still a good, viable road trip car.
Could I say from Gantry to Gantry at the Nordschleife?
Sure.
Where is Gantry to Gantry?
Nürburgring.
No worries.
Okay.
What would you be in, though?
What would you be driving?
Here's something interesting. When I go to the Nürburgring, and I take a group of drivers there each year with a friend, and we go over there, and I've got choice of driving these cars that I work with RSR over there, and I've been out in GT3s and all sorts of really fast cars. I love driving a Renault Megane.
Oh yeah,
a front wheel drive car. It's just, I toss it around and just, I can drive it at the absolute. I went out, this is like 5 years ago now, that we were there and we were testing some data, and somebody said, would you go out and do a couple laps just so we've got some data to compare to other people? So I went out and I did 2 laps, and they were like 9-minute something laps. But they 2 laps in a row, and they were 0.4 of a second apart.
Whoa.
Over a 9-minute lap at the Nürburgring, 14 miles. And I went, I could not do that in a Porsche GT3 or something, because I'd always be leaving something on the table, just a little cushion.
Yeah.
Whereas in this Renault Megane, I drive it flat, like absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would rather drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand. The limit's the fun part, not the absolute speed to me. So
Yeah.
All right. Next in line, what is your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time?
Well, a favorite movie. Oh, actually, I was immediately going to go to Le Mans Grand Prix, but it's tough to pick one. I'm going to say Le Mans is my favorite movie, and the Porsche 917 out of that is kind of got to be that. But I'm going to say a very close second, third is Cars, the animated movie.
Yeah. You're a Hudson Hornet guy?
Yeah.
The kids love cars too, so that's a good choice.
Well, I've often said that it's actually more realistic than some of the supposedly realistic movies.
Robin's racing. So
yeah.
And Ben, you're going to see a lot of that movie in about 3-4 years.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, if it gets me away from Frozen, I am super down. Ross, can you tell us what your favorite track that you've been to so far has been, or that you want to get to that you haven't been to?
The next one.
Yeah, awesome.
That's always my answer to that is, and people. So they'll ask, what my favorite track is, and it's a little bit. Again, there's sort of emotion tied to all these things, which is part of our sport, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite tracks I ever drove was the Milwaukee Mile in an Indy car, because I had a good handling Indy car, and it was just an absolute hoot to drive. Mossport, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, is, whoa, what a track, incredible. Laguna Seca, I love it because it's Monterey. It's just a nice place to go racing.
Sure.
I like all Sebring. What a awesome racetrack. The town of Sebring leaves a little bit to no. Le Mans, is so special because of what it is. But there's one track that still kind of stands out, and I haven't done a lot of driving there. I've done a fair bit of coaching, but just a little bit of driving there. But it's Phillip Island in Australia.
Oh, cool.
It's a magical place because it's on an island. You go through turn 2. I can't remember the name of that corner. You go through turn 2, and literally you can see, I guess it's the Baltic Sea right there. Like the waves are crashing up on the beach, sort of just outside that corner. It's great flowing racetrack, and you're on this island that's just beautiful, and there are kangaroos and koalas and all sorts of cool things. So it's, Phillip Island's pretty damn cool.
That sounds great.
So
Gotta get out there.
What's your favorite turn, or first one that pops into your head? It's hard to have a favorite in some things, but.
And you got to know why.
I think I'm going to go with turn 17 at Sebring.
Really?
Because
oh yeah,
you just the bumps, there is no one line to get through there. There's multiple ways to get through there. To me, the best corners have character, and part of character is, like, if there is kind of one way to get through a corner, that corner doesn't have character to me. And 17 has got a gazillion different ways to get through there, and part of it depends on how your car handles that bump and that bump and that bump. There are kind of guidelines and general rules of how you get through there, but and you can drive it as a just stove it in there as deep as you possibly can, hope you catch it in the middle and try to get out of there quickly, or you can be a little bit more patient on the entry and hustle it through the middle and get out of there a little better. So there's just multiple ways to drive that, and rarely do you ever come out of there and go, that's it, I just nailed it.
Yeah, like I got all the miles per hour on the exit I possibly could, right?
Yep.
Never.
You usually come out of there and go, I left a little on the table. So that to me is, and there are other ones, turn 2 at Mossport, another one, just, and it's just because it's so intimidating, daunting corner.
Did you never feel like you come out with all the speed you could have, right?
Yeah, I mean, you go through there and you come out of there and you go, whoa, I did my job today, but later on you're going, I could get more. So
well, let me ask you this about turn 17 at Sebring, since that one's so famously rough and hard to get through. And you sort of touched on this, sort of saying that, if you come out sort of, you take a timid approach and you get what you get, or you just stove it in there really tough. But if you're rolling through turn 17 at Sebring and you feel like you're the master of your own destiny and you're fully in control, you're probably not going fast enough. Is that what you would say?
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't feel like I'm about to die all the way through here, when you do feel like you're about to die, okay, I'm pretty close.
Right. The oscillations are happening pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you come out of there and you maybe got, chipped teeth and whatever else, you're like, okay.
All right. Gotcha.
And the good news is that it's followed by turn 1, which is almost as challenging.
Yeah.
I think we need
Great.
Sebring now. Okay. Haven't done that one yet. We'll get there.
I've never been there either. I've just watched a lot of racing from there.
The cool thing about Sebring obviously is just the 12-hour is such a, historic race and with all the things that go with that, but also the conditions, even on a test day, you can go there and in the morning you're turning this lap time, in the afternoon you're 2 seconds slower and you're thinking, what have I done? And the track can change so much. And then during the 12-hour race, it can be a little slow for a little bit, then it picks up and then it gets hot and greasy and then it cools down and it gets grippy and it's dark. And maybe, you'll get that afternoon thunderstorm come through that floods the place. And, it's just, that's character.
Yes. Yeah. We got to get down there.
Yeah.
All right. We got 2 more for you, Ross. If you could win one more race, what would it be?
Le Mans.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, that's kind of a simple one for me.
Yep.
It's the, not that I've won all the races that I wanted to win in my life, far from it. But if there was one race that I'd still like to do and win, that would be it.
Awesome.
Any class? Or need to be overall?
Let's just say at this stage of my life, I'll take anything.
Me too. Me too.
If somebody's offered me a ride in their GTM car in at Le Mans, I'm there.
Yeah, if somebody's offering me a ride in their lawnmower race down the street, I'm there. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We've got one that we've asked a few different people, but I think your answer might have maybe the most weight of anybody who've asked this question. So, in your opinion, how much of racing is what we can learn versus how much is innate natural skill we showed up with?
Wow. Yeah, so we could spend another 2 hours on that topic, but I would say that the simple answer is there's more to be gained through learning and development than there is in what you're born with. And I'm not saying that there are not some people who are born with something that makes them pretty darn special, but from what I've seen a lot of drivers who have this natural talent and don't go as far as some other drivers who have lesser natural talent, but work harder at it, put the effort in, develop what they have. And, there's all sorts of research that kind of backs up either one of these things. And I'm not saying that natural ability doesn't have something to do with it, but one of the natural skills or talents or innate abilities that if I was going to pick somebody to be a world champion, I don't know if this is something somebody's born with or something they develop, but it's work ethic.
Right.
And again, I've seen a lot of young drivers who, if they just put the effort in, they have the ability to go to the very top, but they don't. And, and maybe it's the reason why, but it's kind of ironic that there are a lot of drivers who have that natural ability, but because of that, they don't work hard or hard enough. And then there are other drivers who kind of recognize that, okay, I may not be the most naturally gifted driver in the world, but I'm going to outwork everybody else. And they're the ones that end up winning more often than not.
I bet those are also the people who are most concerned with results. The most results-oriented folks are the ones who are willing to do that kind of work, would you say?
Well, yeah. So that's a whole other topic of
yeah.
What do you focus on, the result or what it takes to get the result? And I think maybe we're on the same page there. I think is they're focused on what does it take to get the result.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And they want it so bad. And I think all sorts of examples of drivers who, who you just watch and you go, they just wanted it more than the other drivers did, and they made it happen.
Yeah.
And I currently coach a driver who has learned so much in a very short period of time. A gentleman driver, but has just learned so much in such a short period of time. And a big part of it is just how bad he wants it and how much he's willing to put into it. He's the first driver he's not the first driver to say, I want to be the best gentleman driver in the world, but he's the first that will back up to do what it takes to make that happen that I've seen. So
that's awesome.
I bet it's not easy for people in that station of life to really step away and give the full commitment that they have to give to really get the result they want. I mean, I understand that you got the money to actually do it, but it's hard to really step away, I would guess, at that stage.
I think that is a challenge for drivers who have gotten to that point in their life. They have worked hard to get there, and maybe they're not willing to work that hard for this other activity now. So,
or just step away for 5 days straight. I mean, I'm just kind of putting myself in some bosses' minds that I've had. I'm not going to give up control of my life for 5 days to go do something like this too.
Yeah, and we all make that choice of. I'm not saying that somebody that doesn't put all the effort in, they're bad people. No.
Oh, sure.
It all comes down to the choices we make, and we got to decide what's the most important thing. And for a lot of people at that stage in their life, it's family, it's business, it's other things, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think the only thing the only mistake some will make is they want this, but are not willing to admit that they're not willing to do what it takes to get this.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't put myself in that frame of mind, because if I had the gentleman driver money, I would be at Road Atlanta or VIR every single day, or Thunderhill every single day of my life. That's where I would be every day. You couldn't keep me away.
Yeah. And then you'd have no money.
That's right.
That's how we make a small fortune in racing. Yes. Yeah.
That's right.
So Ben, how do we not Ben, I'm sorry.
Ben, how do we keep up with Ross?
How do we keep up with Ross? Sorry, Ross. How do we keep in touch with you?
Or Ben or me?
With you.
Ross, definitely Ross. Nobody needs to find me for any reason.
Okay. Just my website, speedsecrets.com, has everything from my driving tips and podcasts and
track
webinars and everything else that I do. And I'm kind of, I guess, the usual social media stuff, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, I guess. If I was really smart when all the social media stuff started, I would have done what really smart people do and have the same account name for everything. But, on Facebook, it's Driver Coach. On Instagram, it's at Ross Bentley. At Twitter, I think it's at Speed Secret. So, if you go to my website and click on that little button, it'll take you there. So,
see, Ross, you did that so creatively, because once again, it's always tough to keep up with you.
True.
One of the best ways I've found to keep up with Ross is to buy all of his books and follow him on Instagram, because that's where I pick up on new podcast episodes and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, there's a new one coming out, and usually you can find some snippets of great information on the gram. That's one of my favorite places to find it.
Absolutely.
And I'll say that I've tended towards Instagram as a social media thing. That's kind of, I usually take photos of my feet sitting on airplanes and ask people what track I'm at and stuff like that. So it's it's a little bit fun. I find Instagram a little more fun than.
Yes.
We understand. So,
but in the end, if I could, we'd just get rid of it all and just no. No, I will say that I do. I really enjoy sharing with kind of my involvement with the sport with other people, and I think that's why I kind of like Instagram, because it's so visual that way. So
yes, yeah, it's always fun guessing which track you're at.
Yeah, I've got a few people now though that, they're drivers that I'm coaching, or they're on the team that I'm coaching, or they're the engineer for the team that I'm coaching, and they're all like, "Are we allowed to answer?" Because I see you right here. So
No, if you're there, you can't answer.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So Ross, I have a funny story that we're going to wrap this up with. If I fall for the buy now the hardcover version of Speed Secrets one more time and get the exact same cover that I have on all the other copies of your book, I'm going to shoot myself, because I only do it when I'm up way too late. I'm like, oh, there's a hardcover. I want the hardcover. It's not hard. I have so many copies. So
well, thank you, because now I'm going to retire off the proceeds of my 27 cents that I got off of each copy.
I don't think that's quite going to make it through the nest egg that you desire.
No,
but
because I want to buy that island that you talked about, Jennifer.
Oh,
yeah.
Track?
There we go.
You know,
with
if we get this island, it's going to have the most amazing vehicles ever, because we've got a taco truck on there. We've got dune buggies. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. We had this island.
Wow.
This island's spectacular. I mean, Ben put on a whole Spec Miata series there.
I did. I mandated that the top 20 from that year's runoffs had to be there or something.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, now, you know, after we end this thing, I'm going to be spending the rest of the night thinking, oh, I should have answered that with these cars and that track and that.
Yeah.
Well, you just got to come back.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
all right.
If we ever do get the desert island, we have one person we're going to call to set up our track, because we know somebody who's got some opinions on how a track should be laid out, and we'd love to hear it and see it. So,
okay,
Ross, I appreciate you coming on again. This is episode 150. We're celebrating again. We're getting a little closer to you. We're catching up a little bit, but
I'm trying to think. I'm maybe got 10 on you. Maybe, I don't know. You'll catch me.
Inch by
I'm sure.
We're printing money, so we're just making inflation over here.
Yeah, the only money we make is monopoly money.
That's right. We're just making fake episodes.
That's a great thing about podcasts, is how much you get paid for doing them, right?
Oh, it's amazing how much money it costs us to do these things.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, well, thanks for having me on the show again. This is always fun to do, and anytime.
We do appreciate it, and we will bother you again when 200 comes around. We don't want to be overstay our welcome, but we're more than willing to beg every now and then.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Dominating with Dawson.
Ben Dawson.
Hello.
We have, I think if you approach a racetrack, just about anybody can drive fast in straight lines. You know, it's basically go straight. But I think the key is, how do you handle the turns is what separates the better drivers from the not quite as good. Huh. And I don't know, just call me crazy. You know?
It sounds plausible.
So if we break down turns, and maybe we'll have to talk about some specific turns so we can actually know a little concrete about it. So some of you at home, if you know these tracks, great. If you don't, you can take a peek at them.
Yeah, look them up.
Let's break down how to drive fast corners better.
Okay.
And conversely, maybe how to drive slow corners better. So let's start with a fast corner. What fast corner are you thinking about that's could be difficult for somebody to drive?
I think a lot of people, the fast corner that looms large in a lot of people's minds is turn 12.
I have one.
I was going to say turn 12 at Road Atlanta. Was that the one you were going to say?
I believe that is the one. Yes.
That's a tough one. It's really fast, and there's a lot going on that can affect how fast you can be through the corner. So yeah, that's a great one to talk about.
So turn 11 for those at home is a big downhill, like 10, 12 story downhill into a almost 90 degree right-hand turn. And but like a really favorable radius. Like you can really carry a ton of speed through there. Big wide sweeper, but on the outside of the turn, not very far away, is this big white concrete wall.
Right, and that gets in a lot of people's heads, right? It doesn't make a difference. It absolutely doesn't affect how you drive, but it gets right. It can occupy a ton of real estate in your head, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. It's like the difference between if you play golf, driving a golf ball, and driving a golf ball over a lake.
Yep,
shouldn't matter, but sometimes it does. But anyway, so if I want to drive a fast corner better, what should I be trying to do? What should I be thinking about? What should I try not to do? Is there a way you approach fast corners, and is there a thing that you see when you're teaching people that hangs them up on fast corners?
At least in my experience, I'm often trying to get somebody to get into gas quicker coming out of a fast corner. But yeah, like in my mind, my own personal goal when I've got a fast corner coming up is I just want to lose as little speed as possible. Like I just want to, I'm trying to just break my momentum the least amount as possible. So I'm trying to think of where do I, well, like when's the last second I have to start losing speed to get in here? How much speed do I need to lose? How, can I get away with, will it help me to get all the way down to the apex? Or, if it's a fast corner, sometimes it might be a different line there right by the apex is where the grip is. There are several different things that go through your mind when you're negotiating a fast corner, but in my mind, they all lead to the central question of how can I lose the least amount of speed through here?
So sometimes you may be worried about carrying the speed in. Sometimes you may be worried about getting back to gas as early as possible.
Sure, like depending on the how the corner is radius. If it's a corner that's got a decreasing or an increasing radius, that's going to change how you approach or where the speed is going to be coming in or coming out, going in or coming out of the corner. Excuse me.
What about I guess it would be we're still at Road Atlanta. There's this turn 8 in the way back before 8 and 9, really, depending on the car. They aren't really turns, but you're trying to go as fast as you can. So what I was always trying to do for those turns was I was trying to keep my steering wheel as straight as possible and trying to make sure I scrubbed off as little speed as I could, because when you turn the wheel, you scrub off speed, and just trying to get what little I could out of the car.
I think you're right. In a case like that with a straightaway that's pretty much labeled as a corner, you're just trying to kind of find the way through there that lets you just run it straight, right?
Yeah,
run it straight,
not uphill. Try to minimize the things working against you and maximize the things working against you. Like I don't know if you've done Mid Ohio, but there's a long big straightaway with a little kink in it, and some of it's uphill. So try to go the straight way, but try not to go uphill. And when you're in a car like ours that doesn't have a whole lot of horsepower, that little hill can hurt you.
That's true. So, when you're negotiating fast sections, at least all I'm trying to do is like, how can I do this closest to wide open?
Yeah.
Or can I do it wide open?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't. Like we're talking about running the straightaway or Road Atlanta with a couple of kinks in it. You absolutely got to run it wide open, and there is a better way to do it than and there's a slightly less fast way to do it. But when you're talking about those turns that are labeled as turns that are pretty much straightaway, I'm just trying to just kind of run it as straight as I can. And like you said, there's some kind of big disadvantageous part of it being one side or the other. You would avoid that. If we watch an F1 race at Monaco, I think when they come out of casino and run down the hill, there's that little straightaway, but there's a huge bump in it. So you see all the guys swerve around the bump.
Go around it,
Yep.
Yeah.
So all those sort of things come into play when you're trying to figure out the nuance of a fast turn.
Okay, so fast turns, I know I'm speaking to an anomaly here, but fast turns can be intimidating or scary even to a driver, especially when they don't know what they can do, or when they're relatively new and it's a new track, or if they're a relatively new driver. So any tips or approaches that you'd recommend for somebody working on a fast corner that's causing them issues?
Yeah, for sure. So I would definitely go back to somebody else's tape to begin with. Like even if you're at a track day, go to YouTube and you've got Wi-Fi there. Go find somebody's video in a similar car who's doing it faster than you are. I would say that's what I would do. I guess if I kind of hit that wall, like I can't figure out this certain thing, but I would go to tape to see what other people are doing. If I'm having a tough time doing it, I would go back out on track, and if I was having a tough time or not feeling very good about what I was trying, I would maybe try to take 10 miles an hour off, back out of your speed, sort of slow it down. A lot of times when I'm in the car with a person learning at the track and we get behind a slower car or in a caution, I'd say, hey, great, here's the chance for us to look at this part of the track we've been having a problem with, and we can sort of do it in slow motion and try. And a lot of times it'll click in. So if you're having a tough time, maybe try to bleed some speed off and do it a little bit slower and see what that reveals to you.
And work your way up gradually, kind of thing.
Yeah, they sort of start building it back up, because sometimes you back some speed off, that may reveal, oh, here's what I was doing, and this is why it wasn't working. Definitely another thing I would do is go steal somebody else's technique. Go out on track with a car similar to yours and ride around with them and steal what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I'll go learn. I'll go ride around with other people who are doing it well and see what's working for them all the time. I'm happy every time to steal somebody's technique. If they're doing it better than me, I will take it and run with it. You know, that's why we're out there.
I agree. The one thing that I caution people against is don't always listen to people you don't know and trust in the paddock, because they don't
listen to anybody. Don't listen to anybody. Go see what you can do with them on track.
Right. Because they may say, I'm flat through that turn.
And don't trust anybody. People say all kind of crap.
Yeah.
No, just to me, I use the evidence that I can gather on track is very important to me. Conversations I can have outside of the track or in the paddock are very entertaining to me.
Yeah, it's a verbiage you question, data you may trust, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. What about slow turns? Like, what would be a slow turn? Got any slow turns in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's turn 2 at Laguna Seca is a good one. If we're talking about
turn 2,
Atlanta,
it's kind
turn
of
7 is a good one to think about.
Yeah, I think Laguna may even be better because it's kind of I don't know, it might even be more than a 180. Looks like it. I mean,
and that's one of those.
It feels like it.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where you can come in and run it like a traditional decreasing radius line, like you come in really wide and work your way around to the very late apex.
Yeah.
Or it's one where you can treat it like a diamond. I think a lot of the horsepower cars can run that like a diamond. They just kind of go way down in straight and make a big hook, sort of not at the apex, but it's sort of the outside, and then hook it back around for a super late apex. It pretty much runs them kind of straight across into turn 3. Does that make sense?
Drag race in, drag race out.
Yeah, I mean, it must be nice, right?
I've heard. I've yet to experience, but I've heard.
That's not our world.
No.
At least for me, with the time I did race there, I was in a Miata that was fairly healthy, and I think the fastest approach I ever got going with turn 2 was to sort of come straight across. I sort of ran it like turn 1 at VAR, but I sort of did a straight cut across broadside of the apex and then worked my way out for the exit.
So how would you? Oh, going back to the fast turns, I forgot one point that I was going to bring up. Sometimes, as you're working your way up, there may be some intestinal fortitude required to push a little bit harder, and sometimes you may find yourself having to push your pedal to the floor with your left foot on top of your right foot. Because sometimes your right foot just isn't listening to you, because it doesn't look like to your right foot from the view it's got that down is a good idea. So these are things you're going to have to eventually get used to, but be careful with it. Don't push it too fast.
Yeah, definitely take things by degrees when it comes to fast corners and seeing what you can get away with. Always use cues that you can pick up from other cars that are similar to you. Like for me, if I'm in a spec Miata, I'm not trying to go do the exact same thing I see a guy in a Viper with a bunch of aero doing. So
They're almost the same.
Be realistic with yourself and about your car, and just work your way up to what feels comfortable, and then maybe work your way up to what feels slightly uncomfortable if you're still getting outrun, and sort of see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the slow turn. What can you do to help you in general improve in what you would call a slow turn, especially if the slow turn's a long turn, like almost a carousel or something like that, where you're basically not only you're going slow, but you're going slow for a while.
Those are tough. I mean, that's some of those ones where you might get into talking about a maintenance throttle to get through. If it's a big, long, big radius, you might be just trying to find the right amount of throttle that will carry you through and push you out where you want to be in the track. It may not be that, with a turn like you're describing, a big radius, like a lot of people talk about. We have a track/proving ground here called NC Car. It's got a big bowl. It's like a bowl. They call it the peanut.
Okay, yeah.
And you might want to, depending on your car, the peanut might be fastest if you keep it tight. A different car, different tire might be fastest if you run in the middle or try to hang it outside. But So in a corner like that, you want to find what's comfortable for your car, and what's fastest. So a lot of that's trial and error. You might want to try to go into one of those kind of turns. You might want to go in sort of tight to the inside and let the car work its way out and see how that feels. Or you might want to try to go rim right all around the outside. You sort of go in with enough speed. Go in with enough speed that it pushes you sort of toward the outer part of the corner.
Right.
If you get out there and find that you might get out there and find that it feels good, but there's too many marbles to really do it well. So there could be there could be rolled up rubber out there that makes you uncomfortable, but that would be a good line. So you just kind of have to feel out and then see what factors are involved to finding your fastest way through a turn like that. I hate turns like that. I hate steady state cornering stuff like that, but it's out there every once in a while. There's a lot of that kind of stuff at NCM in the back half, right?
Right. And I think that the key that I've found, and I'm not sure I'm doing it right yet, but the key that I found with the slow turns, especially as they get to be longer and slow turns, is you have to get really comfortable with the car being borderline stable. Like if you're stable, you're slow.
Yeah, if you feel comfortable in a section like that, you're probably not hitting it quite hard enough.
Yeah, there's more. So go get some more, and then find out where your more is, and if it's enough, you may be good. If it's not enough, you may need to, chat with friends or follow people through and say, this is the best I can do right now.
Right.
But there's more somewhere, and you sometimes you just got to go find it. And I think the intimidation factor in a slow turn is naturally lower, so you should be able to explore a little more instability and still be comfortable from a personal standpoint.
Right. A slow corner does give you a chance to kind of do a little more slow-mo stuff with probably less grave consequences. If you're going, if you're coming out of a corner going 40 or 50, you're like, I wonder if I can hit the gas here. Probably not going to be that bad versus a fast corner where you're like, I want to hit the gas a little bit before the apex, and then all of a sudden you're going 110 as you come out, and you push yourself off the track going 110 versus push yourself off the track going 50. That's a big difference. So you've got a little bit more leisure to play around in a slow corner and just see what works as far as it. But when it gets down to a fast corner, you have less time and more speed to sort of figure out what you have to do. So it's always, right. I will always go back to video if I'm not feeling good about it. I'll go back to somebody's video who I know is good to watch. Or I'll just go to school on people who are doing it better than me at the track.
Right. Any tips or tricks that you can think of, or is it really just a matter of, let's say, reps?
Very much of what we do, whether it's slow turns, fast turns, racecraft, a lot of that stuff comes down to seat time and repetition. I wouldn't be anywhere near as adept as I am, which I'm not that great, but I mean, I wouldn't have any of that stuff if I hadn't been out here doing this crap forever. So seat time and this time is what makes you fast. I would say, but
and being willing to try something different.
Yeah, you have to be willing to see what you can get away with. Like I'm obsessed with trying to know what I'm going to be able to get away with in traffic. So I'm going to try some weird stuff at a track day. I mean, tips and tricks I would say are if you're not confident and good enough yet, keep running DEs, and then go dominate at the races. But yeah, if I'm out there racing and not feeling like I'm competitive enough, I would go back to school and go back to DEs and work on it. I mean, I did a million hours at DE before I ever turned a competitive lap, wheel to wheel. So. And I showed up pretty good. But that's my recommendation. But as far as learning what you can get away with in fast corners, that's tough. It's nebulous. Like running a fast corner and knowing how to do it well and maximizing what you got. It just comes down to, I think you're right. It comes down to seat time. It comes down to confidence. It comes down to knowing the tire you're on pretty well and in your car. And above all, if you're trying to figure it out at the track, go try to get on track near somebody who's doing it really well and learn what they're doing.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I would add to it, and I don't know anything else at this point that I could add to it, is I see a lot of people talking to them wherever I'm at the track, and they get married and fixated almost on the line, right?
Oh.
And the line, in my mind, can change depending on the day, depending on the conditions, depending on your car. And sometimes you got to go find out, especially certain turns where there's multiple lines, it just depends on what car you're in. You got to be willing to go out there and try something new, because you could find out that, a late apex in this turn is great for me, but it's much better if I diamond, or vice versa, or whatever.
Yeah. I think people who talk about the line should be saying the guideline, because there's a general line around the track, but it's dependent on so many different things. So if something slightly different than what people are telling you is the prescribed line is working for you, then and you're faster than people, then that's the line for you and your car.
Yeah. And, there's certain turns where the variability from the line could be quite narrow, but there's other turns where it can be very, very wide. Turn
one from at VIR, which I always talk about, but is a great example of that. There's a really definitive horsepower line through that turn. Everybody who has horsepower, if you got more than like 300 horsepower, you run down in there and you make a diamond out of the corner, and you come charging up out of the hole, and you're good to go through turn 3, into turn 3. But if you're in a momentum car, you get in there, you do your braking, and you turn square across and run straight across, and you sort of rim right around the exit to build your momentum, and that's how you do it. So there are two very distinct approaches, for example, between momentum cars and power cars and VIR in that corner. That's a good one. You can go watch plenty of video to clearly see the distinction between the two.
So when you say 300 horsepower, are you talking in a single car?
Yeah, there's some cars that have like 500, 600, 700 horsepower. Like, believe it or not,
one
they're
car
out there, and they're next to you on the track as you pass them through the corners. That's the ones you're passing through the corners. Oddly enough,
in one car. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, talk to your local dealer. Talk to your local dealer and find out.
I mean, we had let's see, what did we have? We had probably 700 horsepower, but we had 4 cars.
That's a lot, even for 4 cars. That's a lot. We'd be having like 4 cars and like 330 horsepower between us.
Very well, sir. All right, we'll try one of those cars one day, maybe. That'd be kind of fun. All right, thanks, Ben.
All right. Oh yeah, yes. Where are you people right now? You all in one place?
We're almost at Lime Rock. We're just outside.
Oh wow.
So
that looks miserable too. It looks like it's cold and wet.
It is. It's lovely.
It's gonna be a skid pad whether you want it to be or not.
Yeah, pretty much. They're saving money on water.
Yeah. Huh. Where was this? What track were you at this past weekend?
NCM.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And how about that back half where you're just like,
It's like I get to turn 14 and I start thinking I'm getting close to the end, and then I do the math and I'm like, I'm barely halfway.
Yeah, it's like you're so much more. This car can even get to the straightaway. But I do like that first turn coming out of the straightaway after start finish. Reminds me, I think it's the festival turns at Portland. I've never driven Portland, but it just seems very reminiscent of that. There's a few spots that are sort of evoke other places, but some of that really fast stuff is a whole lot of fun on the front half. And I even like that one little wacky turn that's kind of like it kind of turns halfway around the course, but that really tight horseshoe kind of deal as you head down that hill.
The sinkhole?
Wild too. I don't even know. I don't even know anything. I was there for like one day with John.
Big left-hander. Like 130.
This is. I'm thinking of a really. Yeah. It's like I've got a really weird line through it once you kind of figure it out. It's like, oh, it's one of those lines that's not obvious until you've done it a bunch of times and seeing fast people do it. Like, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah, you want me to do that? Okay. They're funny in their passengers. They're like, well, how close are you comfortable with? I'm like, way closer than you're going to ever get.
yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, when I got to track driving, I was so used to driving karts where you did never made a pass without contact. And so,
Yep.
I got to like my first track day, and somebody's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I passed kind of close to you." I was like, "I didn't even notice." There's some other guys like, "Oh my God, I almost hit you." I was like, "I don't care. Hit me. I don't care." Well, no, we'll definitely know how bad or good the sound is if you can hear me slapping away on the guitar.
Oh, I can.
Fidget Master is back.
That's right. It's not like we have an internationally recognized guest coming on. Don't worry.
Oh, are we? Is this the show already? Like, what's like? Yeah, hey Ross, we already did like a half hour before you got on. Just jump in whenever you're ready, big dog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, his questions to us would be much better than our questions to him. So.
Yeah, I hope so.
Our questions are like, if B comes after A, does C come after A? Yeah, I think he can come up with a little better questions.
Wait, so I'm trying to picture what's going on there with you right now. So you're in some sort of hotel room or trailer or something right now?
We are in The Shining 2.
We are. It's Jennifer and I.
Okay, cool.
And then Vicky's outside with Alex, one of our friends from up here.
So that's what I was getting at. Like when Ross gets on, you have to yell out the trailer door, like, "Come in here, Vicky! Get off the work stool."
Once this whole thing started going down south on Friday, I knew this was going to be a show, and it was just a matter of how many people were in the show. And Vicky's like, "I'm just going to stay out there and work on the car." I'm like, "Okay."
So what's going on with the car?
So the rear, I bought the car. It was somewhat dialed in 2 years ago.
What did it come with as far as mods? What year is it?
It's got a stage 2 Flying Miata turbo, and it was supposed to have upgraded shocks and suspension and blah blah blah. Race seats, harness, roll bar.
So a bunch of stuff been into it.
Yeah. And so when I got it, I'd never driven a Miata before, and it had this, like, if you went on like a fairly rough road, it felt like it was bottoming out, not the car, but the suspension.
Yeah, that's bad.
So I didn't know, and I asked a couple of people to take it for a ride and stuff, and nobody noticed anything. So anyway, it turns out that what we had done was both rear shocks were blown, and one of them had penetrated the cap. I've got a picture of it.
Wow.
So we found that out. Can you see that or no?
Yeah, is that a shock mount?
Yeah. So it's supposed to have a center hole.
Yeah, we've done that with the E30 before. We had one that was that bad before.
Yeah, so it's bespoke now, and so yeah, so we're replacing all 4, but we couldn't start until we got up here because Alex, our friend, had them, and we were putting in. I think we're going to Coney Yellows, or we're going to the budget Bilsteins.
Sounds great. I mean, you're not trying to put that in the spec class or anything, so it doesn't really matter as long as you get something stiff and sporty.
Well, I figure it's going to be better than what we had since we had no rear shocks.
Oh man, yeah. You're talking to the master of like our team, be like, "Hey, we just realized we've been racing for like 2 years with no rear brakes," or like we always has like that going on. Like, "Oh, hey, guess what? These shocks have been blown this whole time." But
yeah,
we're those guys
with rear shocks, so this should be good. Because I was wondering, I was like, my ND drives so much better than this car going over the same bump.
Wait, so I'm just now looking at this picture of that shock shaft.
Yeah.
Is there a divot worn out of there, or is that an optical illusion?
No, that's the divot.
I've never seen anything like that.
Dude, when we things up.
you go whole.
Dude, when you don't know what bad feels like, you're amazed what you can do.
Oh man. I gotta share one with you guys where I think we had a blown shock, or our shock mount was just, it was a drift, I guess. What else? I gotta send it to you. We were trying. We finally had all of our aero on the E30 and had shot at testing on full course, and then we didn't know we got to the track with a blown shock. So we're like, oh, coming out the corners. It's pretty funny. I'll send it to you.
Well, you got to think of it too. I mean, the amount of weight we shaved off that in the back right, dude, we saved literally 10,000ths of a second per lap. We're having a little bit of a calamity on our end with we found out we had some blown shocks and we're going to a skid pad tomorrow at Lime Rock, so we're trying to repair those in the parking lot of a hotel.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff.
Blown shock?
Yeah. Well, it turns out we bought the car and it probably was blown the entire time and we didn't know because it was a new car to us.
Okay.
So it looks like Ben described this for us. Oh, Ben, this is Ben, Ross, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. I think these guys just had a shock mount that kind of got blown out, so the shock was going up through the mount like this, and it ended up wearing like a divot on the shaft that comes up out of the cylinder of the shock. So it was just doing that and rubbing it in a weird way. So that picture he's showing is the shock mount.
Yeah, it's not it's not a custom design. So
Right. I don't think it was meant to do that.
No. And then this is the bonus. So apparently I was doing it. Let me try and get this on the camera for.
Going all weird.
So that
Going all weird with.
Yeah,
it's shaved down the shaft
I
like
can see that. Yeah.
more than halfway.
So it's kind of like a lathe.
So yeah, that's not good.
No.
But if you knew our team, you'd understand.